the Industrial Revolution of the Mage Lord. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction. So don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 101, The Caster's Fury. Around midnight, while resting briefly at the Spellcaster Manor, Holden and the Eye of Illusion received intelligence on the witch hunters from forum member Earthbane. Without further delay, they cast a 4th level intermediate level concealment spell on themselves, then flew out of the manor window, heading directly for the destination indicated by the intelligence. There are many flight techniques that only high-level spellcasters can learn and use, but each one consumes a significant amount of stored mana, and is generally not used for travel unless in combat or an emergency. Braving the biting night wind high in the sky, and the Eye of Illusion flew northwest of the manor, away from the suburbs of the Barclay capital. The location of the information provided by Mr. Earthbender is very accurate. The Eye of Illusion, which was obviously using an amplifying magic tool and borrowing external forces to fly in the wind, said to Fair, who was flying side by side with him, that is an abandoned mountain monastery of the church, and it is also the main gathering point for witch hunters in the capital of Barclay. Fair thought for a moment. The Earthbender is indeed very familiar with the whereabouts of the church. If I hadn't had many exchanges of magic with him on the forum before, I would have suspected that he was a church spy planted in. You are really humorous. The Eye of Illusion laughed. Tonight is the holy day of the glorious believers. As a classical faction of the church, the witch hunters will definitely gather together to complete the midnight holy prayer ceremony, which is just convenient for us to catch them all in one fell swoop. Fair nodded. Very good. I will leave the task of setting up an anti-magic array outside the monastery to you. The two flew at high speed for about an hour and soon arrived near the mountain monastery, slowly landing in a dense forest not far from the monastery. A thick layer of black flames rapidly erupted from Holden's black mage's short dress, but it didn't radiate a high temperature, merely forming an illusory shield around his body. This was a universal fire elemental protective spell, the 5th ring black flame shield, which lasted 15 minutes and protected him from most physical damage without added mana. The Eye of Illusion also activated its own protective magic, creating a blurry, light-distorting layer around his body. Glanced sideways, his lips curling slightly. With his sharp eyes and vast experience, he immediately recognized that this was force field magic, the specialty of arcane spellcasters. It seemed his temporary battle companion was a high-level arcane mage, one skilled in transfiguration and force field magic. He unleashed the device for the anti-forbidden magic spell array from his storage ring and carefully placed it in a clearing in the woods. While this array's duration was short, its coverage was immense. Once activated, it could cover nearly half the valley where the monastery lay. The anti-magic field can only last 10 minutes. Let's get started. The Eye of Illusion nodded to Fel. I'll be responsible for luring the witch hunters out of the monastery. They'll avoid hiding scattered throughout the monastery, forcing us to waste time individually ferreting them out. He squatted down, pressing his palms firmly to the ground, and silently chanted a spell. He hadn't used a spellcasting technique. Fel narrowed his eyes in surprise, bewildered at his companion's strange behavior. Was the spell's analytical model too complex, and he hadn't yet mastered the ability to engrave it into the magic pattern? Suddenly, he felt invisible ripples emanating from the Eye of Illusion's palms, rapidly transmitting into the ground beneath, sweeping towards the monastery like a powerful wave lurking in the earth. Then he felt the ground shake slightly, but not violently, not enough to dislocate him from his balance. When Fel looked up at the nearby monastery, he was surprised to find that the entire towering structure was swaying slightly in sync with the current, the swaying increasing in intensity. He could hear the sharp clang of bricks scraping against the floor, glass rubbing against window frames, and doors opening and closing. Simulated earthquake. Was Mr. Eye of Illusion planning to collapse the monastery and drive out those witch-hunting scum? He looked so elegant and refined, yet his actions were even more brutal and ruthless than his own. Fel couldn't help but glance again at the Eye of Illusion, crouching on the ground, casting his spell. He realized that even with his strongest amplified Pyroblast spell, he couldn't easily destroy a monastery without a protective array. He would need at least 5 blasts of high-level elemental magic to achieve the same effect Mr. Eye of Illusion had achieved. Truly, one cannot judge a person by appearance. A chaotic clamor gradually rose from the brightly lit monastery. Then the gates flung open, and a group of believers in pure white robes and priests wearing embroidered gold crowns stumbled out. Lord! There's an earthquake. Run, help! I can't stand. Several bricks and stones fell from above, hitting the heads of a few lucky ones at the front of the fleeing crowd. They barely managed to utter a muffled groan before collapsing to the ground and dying instantly. The windows of the monastery's outer wall shattered into violent shaking, sending shards of glass raining down like raindrops, eliciting further wails from the crowd below. In the panic, some people even rushed out of the shattered windows on the second or third floors, crashing to the ground with a thud. That's enough, Mr. Son of Fire. Now it's your turn. The Eye of Illusion slowly withdrew its hands from the ground and looked calmly at Verholden standing beside it. I thought you were going to just knock the monastery down and be done with it, haha. If the monastery collapses, how are we going to count our kills this time? Are you going to dig out their bodies one by hand? The Eye of Illusion seemed quite amused, teasing Fel. Fel immediately shut up, not wanting to discuss the issue any further. Humph, once this guy joins the forum, there will be plenty of opportunities for academic debates with him. He turned his gaze back to the monastery, instantly locking onto a tall man in priestly robes, the last to burst out of the gate. He possessed a direct line of the church's bloodline, impossible to suppress or conceal from the perception of high-level spellcasters. A mid-level bloodline knight gifted with a forbidden magic field. He burst out of the monastery, clutching a sharp longsword that shone with a distinctly enchanted glow, and angrily scolded the chaotic cultists and witch hunters. Suddenly, a powerful magical wave came from overhead, and the bloodline knight suddenly looked up. Under the radiance of a silver moon, lightly obscured by dark clouds, a tall, muscular man in black clothes and red hair stood silently in the sky. The intense magical vibrations emanated from the massive, incandescent fireball that gradually gathered in his hands. It's an evil sorcerer, the Blood Knight gritted his teeth and roared at the sky, but unfortunately, he lacked the ability to fly. He could only watch helplessly as the spellcaster overhead, with incredible speed, condensed his instantaneous spell. A red fireball, even larger than the silver moon, was raised high in his hands and hurled directly towards the monastery gates, where the largest number of refugees had gathered. The Blood Knight instinctively tried to activate his innate abilities, but despairingly discovered that his bloodline power seemed to have suddenly lost its vitality, no longer responding to his calls. Just as the massive fireball was about to strike him, a final cry of rage and disgust echoed in his ears. Fuck you, witch hunter. Chapter 102 Declaration of the Regular Army. Vaughn, raising the prismatic bayonet attached to his mana rifle, stabbed fiercely at the fell orc, whose leg had been shot off and who was writhing and wailing on the ground. Warm, smelly blood splattered down his trouser leg, but Vaughn stamped his foot carelessly. After this battle, there's no longer a sizable fell orc tribe in the river valley, Dave lamented as he cleared the salvageable spoils from the fell orc corpses. It's only just the beginning of winter, and honestly, I kind of missed them back then, desperately fighting us for control of the glacial river, Vaughn snorted, not wanting to continue. Ever since the outpost troops were equipped with the Lord's newly developed sniper-type mana rifles, Commander Pierce had specially selected a group of soldiers with excellent marksmanship and aiming skills to form a separate sniper squad, specifically to target the fell orc spellcasters. Vaughn had been eager to join, believing he was definitely qualified. But Commander Pierce simply passed him over, choosing instead the rather clueless Dave. Originally, Vaughn and Dave were the only two orcs in the veterans group, making it seem like Vaughn was being ignored. I've secretly heard that after the battle, the Lord intends to retain only a handful of elite soldiers, aside from those remaining at the River Valley outpost. Everyone else must be disbanded, a veteran lieutenant quietly approached Vaughn and asked tentatively. Yet, they say the wall construction site is short on manpower. They won't let us deal with bricks and stone, will they? Dave chimed in. The pay disparity is huge. In the army, we get food and fish every day, plus a 120 yuan salary. How can any other job in the territory pay that much? Vaughn slammed the butt of his rifle into Dave's waist. Shut up. Don't talk nonsense about anything Commander Pierce hasn't announced. A nearby messenger, holding the magic stone aloft, blew the rally whistle. Retreat. Retreat. Everyone, assemble. Return to the outpost. Early the next morning, The entire army's rally whistle echoed throughout the outpost. Commander Pierce stood on a wooden platform in the assembly square and shouted to the 300 soldiers lined up in neat formation below, "After 3 months of training, 3 months of actual combat, and 3 months of rotation, you have completed the transformation from civilians to experienced soldiers." He glanced sharply at the soldiers below. "You have protected Lord Harvey's frontier territory from harm and plunder by evil orcs and greedy nobles. Your achievements have earned the unanimous recognition of the Lord and his subjects." Many soldiers secretly puffed their chests out at these words. "However, from now on, your militia will be officially transformed into Lord Harvey's regular army. Those who are accidentally injured or disabled in battle, or those who no longer wish to fight, can register at the quartermaster's office after the group is disbanded. Lord Harvey has said that in addition to the full payment of your salaries, an additional 300 gold yuan will be provided. Retirement pay." There was a slight swaying in the ranks, but no one whispered. This was a matter of discipline and protocol. "Report." Someone raised their hand and shouted. "Speak. Does the regular army mean that the Lord wants to knight us? Will we be awarded land and property?" Dave couldn't help but burst out laughing. Vaughn turned around and glared at him fiercely, frightening him so much that he quickly pursed his lips. "What are you dreaming about?" Pierce rolled his eyes. "Lord Harvey is not a noble himself. Haven't you been humiliated by the nobles enough? What? Just when you have a little bit of ability, you want to turn around and oppress and enslave others?" The old soldier who asked the question blushed and lowered his head. It was true that refugees always hated the nobles, but who could say that he had never dreamed of being a noble lord and enjoying the benefits of tyranny? Pierce said sternly, "Never forget that you are soldiers of commoner origin. You fight to protect our own territory and people. Of course, all of this is done under the leadership of Lord Harvey. Regular troops are professional soldiers, fighting solely to protect our lord, his territory, and all the property and people within it. While others were working in factories, you were training and fighting. While others were farming, you were training and fighting. While others were selling goods in the market, you were still training and fighting." Another veteran raised his hand timidly and asked, "That's no different than now, is it?" Pierce pulled out a document Lord Harvey had prepared for him long ago, coughed lightly, and began to read aloud. "Regular troops require more rigorous training and assessments, stricter management systems, and more generous salaries." The last sentence made the eyes of the soldiers below light up. "The regular army will implement a promotion system. Anyone who completes combat missions, performs exceptionally well, and strictly follows orders will have the opportunity to be promoted to officer." Pierce pointed to himself. "Like me, leading an army." The soldiers finally couldn't help but whisper to each other, all of them excited and enthusiastic. Pierce shook the document in his hand and continued to persuade them. "Officers can receive higher salaries and property in exchange for military merit, such as real estate and shops." Vaughn, standing quietly at the front of the team, couldn't help but frown, wondering if he had misheard. Although there was no land reward, weren't real estate and shops also property? How was this different from being knighted? The soldiers erupted in cheers. Pierce raised his hand to quiet them down and read the last paragraph of the document with a serious expression. "But remember, once you become Lord Harvey's regular soldiers, the rules you must abide by will be far stricter than they are now. Failure of a mission, desertion from battle, brazen treason, and violation of discipline will be severely punished. This isn't just a lash of the whip, the punishment ranges from imprisonment to death. Furthermore, all property and rewards previously earned will be confiscated. Think carefully. If you voluntarily withdraw, there's still time to regret." The soldiers fell silent, but no one raised their hands to withdraw. "Excellent. From this moment on, you are Lord Harvey's regular soldiers. But don't forget, back in the territory, there are nearly 2,500 soldiers like you, eager to compete with you." This military restructuring announcement from Lord Harvey addressed the entire frontier territory, totaling 3,000 combat militiamen. "Next, soldiers whose names I have called, please step out. You will be the first batch of trainee officers and non-commissioned officers in this regular army." Former sharpshooter captain, Vaughn, step out. Former sniper squad leader, Dave, step out. Former Jackdaw Ridge outpost squad leader, Tommy, step out. Former sniper squad leader, Wayne, step out. Chapter 103 Military Restructuring Plan. After completing the plan to transform the Pioneer Territory's private militia into a regular military system, Harvey immediately immersed himself in the territory's development plans. Ever since the unexpected assassination attempt in the laboratory, Reiner could no longer trust Harvey's safety solely to the alchemy beasts. Whether out and about in the castle, Harvey is always accompanied by 2 humanoid alchemy beasts, giant apamens specially trained by Reiner for 24-hour personal protection. Furthermore, 50 refugee soldiers, carefully selected from the regular army and among the first to join the territory, have been deployed throughout the castle and its laboratories as a secondary layer of security. Even previously overlooked locations like the sewer ventilation ducts leading to the castle are now patrolled by dedicated soldiers. In his warm study, with a burning fireplace and hot water pipes running through the walls, Harvey sorted out his work plan while chatting with Tommy, the newly appointed captain of the Lord's Guard, a young officer nicknamed Smart Guy. Does the northern wasteland often experience such heavy snowfall in previous years? Tommy nodded and answered honestly, "Sir, it's basically like this every winter in the northern wasteland. Heavy snow turns the wasteland into pure white hell, freezing and starving people and animals to death." Harvey sighed. It was no wonder the evil orcs came south to raid every winter. Even a race like them, living at the top of the food chain in the wasteland, had such a hard time, let alone the refugees. Over the past month since the arrival of winter in the territory, the cold and snowstorms had caused frequent work and production accidents. The simply compacted and hardened roads had become extremely muddy due to the accumulation of snow, and even the alchemical camels were often stuck in the road and needed rescue. The underground drainage in the residential area froze completely overnight, and on several occasions, it backed up into the houses, causing chaos. Fortunately, the HVAC project I'd planned before winter arrived wasn't delayed. Now, every household has a large alchemy beast-powered boiler, directly heating their homes through metal water pipes. Otherwise, relying solely on simple fireplaces, many people would have suffered frostbite or illness this winter. Once winter passes and the snow melts, we'll need to consider paving the territory's roads with concrete and gravel to prevent a repeat of this winter's misfortune. However, the most pressing priority now is to fully implement the reform plan for the regular army, issuing a detailed set of organizational structures, regulations, and reward, punishment, and promotion standards. Harvey had played many military-related war games as a child, but had no real experience with this field. He had to rely entirely on a modern understanding to fabricate a completely new military reform plan. The frontier territory currently only has a total of 3,000 trained and combat-experienced soldiers. Therefore, Harvey didn't want to set too high a standard for the army. He temporarily divided them into 2 independent units, designated the Guards and the Northern Army, one responsible for the defense of the territory, the other for external offensive operations. The units were organized into battalions, squads, and groups, with 10 men in a group, 10 groups in a squad, and 10 squads in a battalion, totaling 1,000 men. As an Earth traveler well versed in the history of world wars, Harvey considered the overall combat capabilities of ordinary people of all races in this world, excluding spellcasters, to be roughly comparable to village brawls. Even battles between spellcasters were, at best, magical village brawls. The combined forces of the Union and the Wizard Kingdom in the Evil Moon Mountains, comprising only 500 mid-level spellcasters, were already the most elite spellcasting force in the southern continent. His civilian soldiers, trained in combat and experienced in the use of mana spears, were, in a sense, a natural match for the mage squadrons, their magical attacks only slightly different in their method of release. The damage of the magic gun's energy beam bullets was no less than that of a mid-level spellcaster's instant fireball spell. It was just a matter of one single target piercing attack, while the other had a single target area of effect attack. As for the military's rules and regulations, the laws and disciplines were simple. Absolute loyalty to the Lord went without saying, along with the obligation to obey orders at all times, not to desert during battle, and not to betray. However, Harvey emphasized one particular rule in particular: private looting and harassment of the people were strictly prohibited. A common problem among all noble knight orders, as well as levied armies composed of civilians and mercenaries, in this era, was the tendency to indulge their men in wanton looting and harassment during battle to boost morale. While Harvey's primary target was currently the alien felorcs, this rule needed to be clearly defined to prevent irreversible consequences. There would always be a need for the army to cross the Divine Spine Mountains and enter the Southern Kingdom and the noble fiefdoms, especially since he had completely offended the grizzled lord, Earl Fagan. However, the inherent greed inherent in human nature cannot be completely eradicated or altered by mere regulations. Discipline and punishment alone are not enough, They must be accompanied by appropriate rewards and a system of honor, providing both material and spiritual comfort to soldiers who strictly adhere to the rules and regulations and exercise self-discipline. Rewards must be real money and permanent assets, tangibly falling into the hands of those willing to play by the rules. These individuals, driven by their own interests and assets, will cling to him tightly, firmly entrenched in the frontier territory. Anyone seeking to harm or overthrow Harvey will be met with fierce resistance from this interest group. Honor, on the other hand, is a form of positive moral coercion. It can range from the cheers and support of the people of the territory to various honors and titles within the army. In short, anything that satisfies the soldier's vanity is enough to motivate them to become role models of virtue. Rewards were specifically focused on building properties like real estate and shops. Harvey believed that current farmland needed to be cultivated intensively with alchemy beasts to maximize yields. Distributing these rewards to individual households would easily reduce farming efficiency, a costly outcome. Furthermore, he didn't want to cultivate a cadre of military nobles with extensive private land holdings, detaching themselves from the masses and transforming them into a new class of aristocrats, antagonizing the common people within the territory. Therefore, rewarding them with houses and shops was the most appropriate option. This acted as an additional fixed asset, providing the individual or family with a substantial pension upon retirement. This is a leap forward from feudalism to the embryonic form of capitalism, Harvey muttered to himself, putting down the quill he had been writing the article on. In the future, his territory would no longer be populated by traditional landed aristocrats, but rather by a large group of rentiers with fixed assets. The landlords and landladies whom he hated the most in his previous life were actually pushed onto the stage of history by himself in this life. Chapter 104 Funeral and Promotion. A funeral was taking place on a cleared patch of grass on the southeast side of the frontier territory's walls. This area was close to the farms east of the territory. From this slightly elevated slope, one could see a flat expanse of farmland not far away. Several enormous agricultural alchemy beasts, assisted by farmhands, were maneuvering across the fertile, black fields. The lawn was small, similar in size to the civic square in front of the Lord's castle, the only difference being that it was surrounded by a low cobblestone wall. This wall only served to contain the herds of beasts grazing on the hillside. Ordinary people could easily scale it with a single hand. Vaughn stood shoulder to shoulder with two newly promoted military colleagues, wearing their newly issued, brand-new black winter uniforms. Pinned to their chests was a pure white frost flower, a flower unique to the northern wastes that blooms only in winter. He had never heard of funeral ceremonies. His recollection was that only when a noble Orcish tribal leader or high priest died would their bodies be burned on a pyre, their charred skulls removed for later offerings and ceremonies. Ordinary orcs or human refugees, on the other hand, rarely held funerals. They lived in fear, like weeds in the wind on the wasteland, dying in silence. The lucky ones would be secretly carried by their loved ones to a secluded spot, buried in a dug pit, but would surely be dug up and eaten by wild beasts at night. The unfortunate ones would have their bodies dragged back to their tents by the hungry orcs before they could even cool, serving as an extra winter snack. But today, he had been notified to represent the entire army, along with two other battalion commanders of his rank, to attend the funerals of a dozen ordinary soldiers who had died in battle. Vaughn knew these soldiers well. Some were veterans recruited at the same time as himself, caught in a close-quarters ambush and decapitated by an axe during a battle with the fell orcs, unable to reload their ammunition. Others had followed their companions out of the outpost in the middle of the night, attempting to retrieve their comrades' remains from the clutches of the giant beast puppets, only to be left behind. Some had recently joined the army, receiving only a month of training before being transferred to the River Valley outpost. On their first encounter, they were struck visibly by a bone spear, dying before reaching the medical station. Most of them, like himself, were single men struggling to survive in the wilderness. They had barely raised families, let alone children, and had barely even touched a woman's hand. A few had families, wives and well-fed children. The youngest, born after arriving in the territory, could barely walk. In the past, his wives and children would have been in dire straits. While the women could find men of comparable age to support themselves, the children were a waste of food, often carried off to the wilds at night and abandoned, vulnerable to nocturnal beasts. However, Lord Harvey seemed to care deeply for the widows and orphans left behind by the fallen. He not only fulfilled the promise he made when establishing the regular army, providing the families with a generous pension, but also provided their offspring with free public school enrollment and an additional monthly ration of food and charcoal. This meant that the families of the fallen soldiers could support their children even without working, until they graduated from school, became literate, and found high-paying jobs in factories they barely understood, earning as much as officers. No wonder even a simpleton like Duff couldn't help but exclaim in envy. Even he felt a little envious of such treatment. Ugh, damn it. Vaughn shook his head violently, desperately trying to dispel such foolish thoughts. He didn't want to die on the battlefield and have his wife become someone else's. Wait. Vaughn suddenly remembered that he didn't have a wife. He had never even touched a woman's hand. Mr. Asdalon was presiding over the soldier's funeral, but the ceremony speeches were a bit too long, and Vaughn only caught a few sentences he understood. Words like, "Those who sacrificed their lives protecting their homes and loved ones will be forever remembered, and the souls of the soldiers who fought bravely will surely return to the territory." These words made Vaughn feel a surge of warmth in his heart, and his eyes and nose felt a little sore. Those who had just been walking around in front of him were now encased in small clay pots. The bodies of the fallen soldiers were not easy to transport back to the territory, so they were personally collected and burned to ashes before being brought back. The final part of the funeral was the burial. The pottery jars were neatly stacked in the pre-dug pit. Mr. Asdalon asked all the officer representatives to line up in order of their rank and position, shovel a handful of soil and fill the pit. The first one to come was Vaughn, who was at the head of the team. He was now the most senior battalion commander among the 3 battalion-level officers, so naturally he was at the front of the team. He shoveled the soil in front of him, and felt an inexplicable heaviness in his hand. The dozens of officers behind him stared at him in silence, making him slow down his movements. After filling in a handful of soil, he couldn't help but pluck a white frost flower from his chest and gently placed it on the stone tombstone erected in front of the pit. He only recognized a few of the words on the tombstone, which were probably their names. Vaughn knew that many soldiers born as refugees lacked full names, often being referred to by catchy nicknames. But when the Lord compiled the list of the dead, he had simply assigned them new names and surnames. Mr. Asdalon said this way, even decades later, when people came to pay their respects, they wouldn't be confused about their identities. That was wonderful, Vaughn thought. If this was his final resting place, he would have the honor of receiving a surname personally bestowed by Lord Harvey. He had never had one before, and it seemed neither had his father or grandfather. It would be wonderful to be named Floyd after death. No, his status was too low to sully Lord Harvey's name. After the funeral, Asdalon hurried back to the Lord's castle to report to Harvey. "Sir, the soldier's funeral has been arranged." He seemed to be in a complicated mood. "When I was presiding over the ceremony on the spot, I observed some quite interesting behaviors and attitudes of those officers." Harvey put down his quill, raised his head and asked with a little curiosity, "Oh, shouldn't the funeral be solemn and dignified? Why do you find their behavior and attitude interesting?" "No," Asdalon shook his head, as if he couldn't accurately describe his feelings. "I can't say what this feeling is. I have never seen any nobles or superior wizards treat lowly civilians like this in the past." Harvey laughed. "That's normal, because I am neither a noble nor an ancient superior wizard." He pressed Asdalon to sit on the sofa and explained with a smile, "But you think their reactions and attitudes are very good, right?" Without waiting for Asdalon to answer, he continued to himself, "This is what I told you, another disguised way of winning people's hearts. This is different from rewarding them with money, but the purpose is the same. Harvey's ultimate goal is to make these soldiers of civilian origin begin to think and understand why they are fighting. When they understand that fighting bravely and defending their homes can earn them the same high honor as noble knights, and that they will be constantly praised and remembered, then this army composed entirely of civilians will undergo an unimaginable change in thinking." Chapter 105 The Way of the Night. Azurio emerged from the territory's medical center, carrying a small bag containing his spare clothes. He noticed a dozen or so residents meticulously clearing the once snow-covered streets. The cold sunlight reflected off the snowdrifts, a dazzling white that forced him to squint slightly. In the lab assassination, he had tragically suffered a lung puncture from a dagger. He had assumed his luck would fail him this time, that he could rely on his strong physique to survive, as he had with his previous hand loss. But he was taken to the medical center and, under the meticulous care of Master Egno, he recovered in less than 2 weeks. The healing process was a bit horrifying. His wounds were being sutured by a terrifying metal monster with 4 mechanical arms and glowing red eyes. Every day, a figure in a pure white smock, their mouth and nose covered with the matching cotton, would inject a strange, pale green liquid into him through a glass tube with a steel needle at the tip. Just as Uriel stood dazed at the entrance to the infirmary, a city official in a dark blue uniform, accompanied by several soldiers, suddenly entered and asked, "You are Uriel, right? How is your recovery?" "The Lord wishes to see you." "The Lord?" Was the Lord going to hold him responsible for bringing the assassin into the laboratory? Although Uriel was a little confused, he instinctively followed a city official to the castle. 2 soldiers stationed in the lobby approached and conducted a thorough body search, even down to his crotch and soles. He was then led upstairs to a luxurious room, draped with thick velvet carpets and filled with warmth like spring. "This is the Lord's study." "Well, wait. He just woke up and is still having breakfast." In each corner of the small room stood a humanoid metal monster, its crimson eyes fixed intently on Uriel, making him feel uneasy. Fortunately, the awkwardness didn't last long. When Lord Harvey entered the room, all the soldiers and alchemists bowed simultaneously. Uriel also quickly recalled the etiquette he had learned during his night training and knelt on one knee to salute the Lord. "I figured out your situation," a gentle voice came from above his head. It was Harvey who had just sat down at the desk. "Even when under duress, you were still brave enough to speak out and warn me, which is enough to show your loyalty." The word loyalty reached Uriel's ears, making his eyes soar and his throat tighten. "My lord. I am just following the character that a knight should have." Harvey chuckled and teased, "But I remember that you don't seem to be a formerly knight." Uriel's face flushed instantly, and he stammered, I haven't collected the necessary offerings for the title. I'm not a noble, nor am I a descendant of a knight, so..." Harvey interrupted his somewhat embarrassed explanation and comforted him. "The title of knight is just an empty name. True bravery is having the courage to face evil, fight against injustice, and protect the weak. I believe you have all these qualities." Wolf, who had been publicly hanged in the civic square 3 days earlier, had clearly confessed during his trial that their original plan consisted of 2 steps. First, coercing Uriel, who was familiar with the ventilation and sewer systems, to lead the way into the laboratory and plant evidence, and second, to seize the opportunity to assassinate him. This plot from Grisly Castle resulted in the innocent death of a night patrol soldier. If it weren't for the Territory Hospital's medical alchemist and Egno, the master of healing, Uriel would have been seriously injured and killed. After Uriel calmed down a little, Harvey continued, "I am not a noble myself, so I cannot appoint you as an official knight just for your achievement this time." He paused and continued, "But I am sure you have heard that Wolf, the murderer who stabbed you, was executed 3 days ago, and his body is still hanging on the gallows in the square for public display." Uriel lowered his body and answered sincerely in a low voice, "Sir, I am very grateful that you can save my life. I dare not ask for any appointment or reward." Harvey waved his hand, signaling the guards beside him to pull him up from the ground. "The reward you deserve cannot be erased. Since you have received formal knight training in the past, I have some questions I want to test you." Uriel raised his head with a puzzled look, thinking, "Is the Lord going to test my fighting skills or knight etiquette? What do you think of today's traditional nobles?" "There's no need to be perfunctory or afraid to answer, just tell the truth." The apprentice knight was stunned for a moment, lowered his head and thought for a moment, then answered carefully, "Nobles are born into aristocratic families, and the status and position brought by their blood are very different from commoners like us, but they never seem to really value the glory and reputation brought by their status. Most of them are obsessed with money and pleasure, and regard the suffering of the people as nothing." He paused, as if he had been holding his breath for a long time, and finally vented it unscrupulously at this moment. "Most of those feudal knights have never followed the true way of chivalry. They fight for power and allow their followers to oppress civilians, grab personal gains in fights between nobles, and plunder people wantonly in wars. Such a knighthood and title is a betrayal and a shame to me. I don't care about it." Harvey clapped his hands in appreciation, thinking that this young man has a very high spiritual awareness. He stood up and walked over to Uriel, pretentiously raising his hand to straighten the collar of his tattered cotton coat, inadvertently glancing down at his bare sleeve. Uriel also noticed the Lord's scrutiny, and with a sense of inferiority, he quickly tucked his broken arm behind his back, subconsciously concealing it. "Rest well. I heard your lung was punctured. Even after leaving the hospital, be careful not to catch a cold." Harvey's concerned tone made Uriel's eyes red with excitement, but the following words made his eyes widen in disbelief. "After the winter festival, I will officially recruit you into the Territory Defense Force as its political advisor. How about that? Are you willing to accept, my lord? I'm already disabled. How can I join your army? And, what kind of military position is a political advisor? I've never heard of it before. Harvey couldn't help but burst out laughing and patted Urio's shoulder vigorously. I want you to join my army and teach my soldiers what the true way of chivalry is. He grabbed Urio's disabled arm without a trace of teasing or discrimination, and solemnly promised, don't worry, the treatment technology of the Territory Hospital is rapidly advancing. One day there will be a way to solve the problem of your broken hand. After all, many soldiers have been injured and disabled in battle. Urio's eyes lit up instantly when he heard this, and he asked with expectation, my lord, is it true? Can you really restore my broken hand? Then will I have the opportunity to use your powerful magic weapon to fight bravely for you and the people of the territory, of course. The position of political advisor requires leading and inspiring the fighting spirit of the soldiers, and always charging at the forefront, Harvey explained with a smile. My army's political commissar must, of course, lead the charge. Chapter 106 Winter Festival, 3K words, end of this volume. The Frontier Territories Winter Festival was officially scheduled for the day of winter's end. It heralded the end of the harsh winter and the arrival of the rebirth of early spring. City officials began clearing the streets of snow 3 days in advance. Colorful banners hung outside the gates of factories, shops, and government offices, bringing a vibrant touch of color to the once monotonous gray concrete buildings. Notices were hung early in the day in the civic square, announcing that, in addition to the traditional target shooting competition, there would also be a grand garden party, free for anyone to participate. Through games and competitions, everyone could win prizes and delicious food. Early in the morning, Father Crone rose and began to get ready, constantly urging Urio to wash and eat before accompanying him to the winter festival. Arriving too late would prevent him from getting a good front row seat for the target shooting competition. Father, your leg problems haven't been completely cured yet, so stay out of crowded places. News of Urio's impending enlistment in the Territory Defense Force after winter dusk spread quickly throughout the army. Several high-ranking officers had already visited him in advance and offered him subtle overtures of goodwill. Leveraging these connections, he had someone procure some magical potions from the infirmary to treat Father Corin's increasingly severe footsores. Fortunately, the potion Lord Agno had concocted proved incredibly effective, and within just 2 days, several of Corin's festering sores had healed and scabbed. Seeing Corin, who still limped slightly, stubbornly insisting on attending the winter festival, Urio could only smile wryly as he accompanied him out, joining the bustling crowd as they made their way to the civic square. In the spacious square in front of the Lord's castle, outdated temporary structures like the gallows had been removed, leaving only wooden stands to accommodate Harvey and other high-ranking officials. 2 rows of defense soldiers, responsible for the Lord's security, had already been positioned around the stands. Clad in pristine, thick black uniforms and carrying gleaming silver magic spears, they stood erect, their backs erect like javelins, tightly encircling the stands where Lord Harvey sat. Several open, makeshift sheds had been erected in the square. The busiest shed was already overflowing with residents who had come to participate in the celebration. It was where prizes and food were being distributed for the garden party. Don't push. Only underage children are eligible to receive a fried chicken leg. Everyone else has to participate in the garden party and receive the prizes before they can redeem them for food. The food distribution staff, sweating profusely in the cold winter, worked with the soldiers maintaining order, frantically reiterating the rules of the celebration to the gathered residents. The staff member next door who was in charge of distributing prizes was also sweating profusely and waving his hands at the top of his lungs. Participate in the garden party activities, go to toss rings, throw stones, guess riddles, spell words, get prize coupons, and then come back to me to redeem the prizes. As he spoke, he held up the various prizes in his hands and kept showing them. Look! These are gloves made of reindeer skin, real high-end products. 20 coupons can be exchanged for free. Without spending a penny, just participate in the game, and this, a double-layer rabbit for winter hat. You don't have to worry about your ears getting frozen when you wear it when you go out at night. Only 18 coupons. Mead wine, the farm just brewed it this autumn. It has a mellow and long taste. Reward yourself with a glass after a hard work, paired with smoked venison. It's amazing. Only 10 coupons can redeem a bottle. Every time the staff member introduced a prize, the crowd burst into cheers. and more people immediately turned and walked towards the shed where the garden games were taking place, ready to line up to participate in the game and win these tempting prizes. In the center of the square, a massive stone bonfire pit was erected. Several strong soldiers carried a dozen or so spiced cattle and sheep, skewered them, and roasted them constantly over the fire. Chefs from the food processing factory, their faces glistening with oil as they roasted the cattle and sheep over the blazing charcoal, carried a variety of seasonings. They rubbed spices on the cattle and sheep, and the fragrant aroma of barbecue could be smelled from afar. Harvey, draped in a thick bearskin coat, sat in the square's stands. A heated fire barrel was placed under the fur-backed chair to protect the frail lord from the midwinter weather. He smiled at the crowds thronging the square, enthusiastically surrounding the fair's play huts and playing various fun games he had invented amidst loud noises and laughter. It seems the idea of participating in games in exchange for free food and prizes is quite appealing. On the day of the celebration, except for the defense forces responsible for security and the medical staff on duty, everyone else was off for the entire day. The celebration's garden party attracted at least 2/3 of the territory's inhabitants, crowding the square. The reason for expending so much stored food and goods on this celebration was actually a question Harvey had been contemplating and planning: how to foster a sense of identity and loyalty among the people. These refugees, once displaced and precarious, would have had no immediate understanding of the concepts of identity and loyalty. A year ago, they couldn't even read a single word on a notice board, their sole concern being whether they could eat enough each day or freeze to death at night. The more ignorant and backward, the more short-sighted. This is the inevitable law of social development. But now, things are completely different. These inhabitants, now with stable jobs, homes, and savings, have developed a sense of home and understand that their interests are inextricably linked to those of the territory's lord, sharing their common destiny. Harvey also gradually reinforced this sense of home through timely and full salaries, continuous improvements to the territory, and widespread literacy education. If this practice were maintained steadily for 3 to 5 years, it would become a shared understanding and tradition, and the people living in the territory would eventually realize that under Lord Harvey's leadership, their lives were 100 times happier than those of the humble commoners elsewhere. Without comparison, there is no harm. The garden party was in full swing until noon, and the enthusiasm of the people, who participated in various interesting games and won delicious food and prizes, remained undiminished. Groups of 3 or 4 gathered around the fire in the square, clutching their own rations or the delicacies they had exchanged for prizes, chatting and laughing as they ate. The Northern Army, to which Dave and Vaughn belonged, was not responsible for security at the winter festival. Having just returned from a rotation at the River Valley outpost, they were entitled to a day of free leave as per military regulations. HMPH. Those guys from the Municipal Affairs Department recognized my identity and won't let me participate in the stone-throwing game, saying it's unfair to others. Duff and Vaughn were not wearing officer uniforms today, but they were still spotted by the sharp-eyed person in charge of the garden party, who directly declined them. Vaughn took 2 oatmeal pancakes filled with fat and meat, and ate with his mouth full of oil. It's a pity that such delicious food can only be eaten at the winter festival. If the army could eat this stuff every day, I wouldn't bother to come even if they carried me to participate in the event. He pointed with his oily fingers at the people gathered around the stone-throwing ring activity stall, watching them clumsily throwing one skewed ring after another, and couldn't help but laugh. We are soldiers from the Sharpshooter Corps. If we go to play games with these amateur stupid guys, we won't give them a chance to survive. We will take all the prizes. Wayne squeezed up from behind and urged in a low voice, go back to the camp and change into military uniforms. The shooting competition in the afternoon is the important thing. What? Do you want to lose to those bloodless softies in the defense force? After Vaughn was promoted to the commander of the Northern Army Battalion, Daff and Wayne were also promoted to captains, each leading a team of 100 soldiers. The cliques of veterans and new recruits still existed, but now they were subtly competing and antagonizing each other between the Northern Army, responsible for overseas operations, and the Guards, responsible for defending the territory. Vaughn won the first shooting competition and was personally awarded an exquisite medal by the Lord. He wore it on his chest and flaunted it, sparking jealousy among the new battalion commanders of the Guards. We all came from the same background. Vaughn simply joined the army earlier. Why should you be superior to others? The celebration shooting competition was a chance for the rising recruits and the Guards to show off their prowess. They were all elite marksmen, nurtured by a single magic bullet. Who could possibly be worse than the other? However, during the afternoon shooting competition, they were immediately hit by the rules announced by the Lord himself. No officer, captain or above, from either the Northern Army or the Defense Force, is allowed to participate in this shooting competition. This is to give the new soldiers a chance to demonstrate their abilities. Damn it. If the veterans aren't allowed to compete, those new recruits won't necessarily be able to compete against the veterans of the Defense Force, Dave grumbled, frowning. These veterans naturally follow their lord's orders like Oracle, but being rewarded for their performance in front of Harvey was a more important goal for them. What should we do? I don't see any of these team leaders who can shoot as well as us, Wayne frowned, pondering. Vaughn glanced around at the team leaders gathered around him and his group. They all looked incredibly unskilled. The team leaders hunched their shoulders, their heads bowed nervously like chickens, not daring to step forward and promise victory under the fierce gazes of the top brass above them. Fellow captain, the clever Tommy, grinned as he squeezed in. He whispered, I've heard who the Defense Force will be sending to compete. Should I have someone lure those standouts to the public restroom? And then, he raised his hand, gesturing as if to push someone into a dung bucket. The Northern Army doesn't engage in such shameless, underhanded dealings. Vaughn, realizing Tommy was up to something unconventional, immediately rebuked him. If you lose, the worst that can happen is you'll just keep your tail between your legs for a few days. When you get a new mission, you'll be able to crush them again. Tommy remained unfazed by the rebuke. Still grinning, he pulled over a shorter soldier, even younger than himself. His name's Bamboo Pole, a soldier in my squad. He's a better shot than me. He used to hunt with his dart blowgun technique, and he's never starved in the wilderness. Wayne's eyes lit up, and he grabbed the seemingly barely adult soldier, nearly burying his head in the wide collar of his uniform. Damn, I've heard of you, Bamboo Pole, right? You're the main force of the competition. He pulled over the dazed Duff and pointed at the shiny new officer's leather boots on his feet. See? Captain Duff is wearing a pair of military boots, custom made for non-commissioned officers. He has an identical pair at home. If you perform well, he'll reward you privately. Duff nodded, then scratched the back of his head before slowly reacting. Damn, why did you use my things as a reward? Don't you have any of your own? You bastard. Chapter 107 Anonymous Consignment. Not long after returning to Datis, Holden saw the member code name of Eye of Illusion on the Magic Network forum. HMPH. I knew this guy wasn't here to help me for nothing. The fact that Mithril Unicorn had given him the anti-forbidden magic circle device to take to Barclay, rather than to Fur, a fellow forum member, was enough to indicate that he had long been a candidate for new membership. Fur didn't see any problem with it. Mr. Turing's approval of his application was in itself a recognition of his performance in this revenge operation. However, he logged into the forum today not to reminisce with a new member Eye of Illusion. Instead, he was there because a new feature had appeared on the forum, Anonymous Consignment. Holden was confused. The forum itself was a form of anonymous communication. As long as members didn't meet in person, there was no need for this additional anonymous trading section. But once he actually entered the newly authorized forum interface, he realized how wrong he was. Elementals. They even dare to put these things up for sale. Isn't this a research area expressly banned by the Federation? And how can such research results be traded? With a look of utter astonishment on his tousled crimson curls, Fell flipped through the anonymous consignment forum, his mouth agape as he scrolled through the rapidly refreshing trading information. Life-enhancing spells, curse spells, sacrifice spells, demon summoning spells, dark magic stones, ghost puppets, distorted beasts. He even saw someone consigning live demon captives. He hadn't expected these high-level spellcasters on the forum, who usually appeared respectable, to be so frivolous in private. Fell couldn't help but recall the secretive, furtive way he'd gotten when he first joined the forum, trying to trade with the man in the mirror for a death weapon crafted from a demon priest's head. He noticed that upon entering the anonymous consignment forum, all the forum members' codenames had become blurry, mercurial dots, flickering and pulsing, their names indistinguishable. Furthermore, the more popular spells and items within a section were listed at the top of the trading list, and the transaction information was thoughtfully displayed in bold red font, inviting people to click in and check it out. The consignment of a live demon captive was currently listed high up at the top. Fair couldn't help but tap the crystal screen of the demon brain, entering the detailed transaction details. After all, demons were a highly intelligent race like humans. If they could be used for magical experiments, the feedback would surely far surpass that of less intelligent lesser demons or rock goblins. Procuring experimental vessels of this quality would be difficult without visiting the demon-infested battlefields of the Evil Moon Mountains. After all, the demon's inherent racial talent, flesh and blood explosion, made capturing them alive extremely challenging. The detailed transaction interface was completely different from what Fair had imagined. Unlike the purely text-based information exchange section, it actually included a video clip similar to that displayed by the image stone, which played repeatedly on the crystal screen. A frail demon, chained tightly to a metal lab table, struggled helplessly. Clearly injected with a large amount of anesthetic, or perhaps under a weakening spell, the experienced Fel commented immediately. A question suddenly struck him. The forum's previous teleportation array had always been unable to transport large, heavy creatures, but this demon clearly exceeded the array's capacity. How had the forum solved this teleportation problem? Has the forum's magic web teleportation array been upgraded again? A vague thought struck him, even to the point of seeming a bit unbelievable. If this continued, would forum members be able to use the magic web teleportation array to instantly teleport across the entire continent? Would that mean that whenever there was a consensus among the forum members that required a joint effort in real life, the forum could instantly transport a group of top-tier spellcasters to a designated location? If this advanced technology were acquired by the Union and the Wizarding Union, the brutal, century-long stalemate with the demons wouldn't have to happen. They could easily advance into their lair deep in the northern borders. I wonder if those members of the forum with Confederation backgrounds, and the teachers, will notice the same problem as I do. Fel sighed, smoothing his messy hair. Harvey, who had just launched a new forum feature, was keenly following the progress of the anonymous consignment service. This forum section itself was a functional upgrade during the establishment of the information exchange section, primarily to facilitate future prohibited transactions that were inconvenient to bring to light. He also wanted to test whether the Magic Network Forum's addition of a planetary-scale energy-focusing array would increase the upper limit of its instantaneous teleportation array for living creatures. Not long ago, he and Reiner conducted experiments using some large beasts and captured fell orcs. No transmission problems were encountered, except that these large creatures often experienced fainting and vomiting after the interdimensional transport, which was acceptable. I didn't expect these forum members to actually bring out so much contraband once anonymous transactions became a reality. As a forum administrator, Harvey naturally had full access to every member's true trading information. Mr. Mirrorman from the Alchemical Exploration Society, in particular, had completely let loose after entering the anonymous forum. First, he lavishly purchased several types of prohibited research materials related to flesh transmutation experiments. Then he pulled out several interim results from soul decomposition experiments that clearly couldn't be made public. Aren't you guys from the Alchemical Exploration Society usually involved in the research and manufacture of magical weapons? How come you're such geeks in private? Harvey's mouth twitched as he stifled a laugh. A one-way communication symbol flashed on the crystal screen of the magic brain, distracting Harvey's attention. That inner demon? Why is he suddenly looking for me? Harvey was puzzled. Ever since his abrupt remarks at the forum, sparking an uproar and speculation among the members, this seemingly polite demon had seemed somewhat ashamed of himself and hadn't appeared on the forum for a long time. He hadn't expected him to suddenly visit him again today. Kilthuzid, long time no see, Mr. Mindhunter. Mindhunter, hello, Mr. Locator. Forgive me for the intrusion again. The inner demon seemed reluctant to call Harvey by his forum nickname, preferring the name Locator it had given him when they first met on the Demon Network. Mindhunter, I've noticed an interesting anonymous trading activity on the forum. How can I participate? This information gave Harvey a thought. Demons in other dimensions also want to participate in anonymous trades? Could this ancient race, which can only invade projections in the real world, be interested in trading items with spellcasters? Mindhunter, although I can't perceive your thoughts in real time due to the space and planes between us, I guess you're wondering why a demon would be interested in mortal items? Harvey rolled his eyes speechlessly. This guy's racial talent can even be released across planes. The saying that demons are good at understanding and seeing through human nature is really true. Kilthuzid, I am indeed very curious, but if you are not convenient to tell me, I don't mind. The forum follows the principle of equal exchange. You need to earn points first before you can use them to purchase the items you need. The other party's code name flashed slowly, as if they were trying to understand the series of forum transaction rules described by Harvey. It took a long time before they sent another reply. Mindhunter, I understand. What I want to consign anonymously is a summoning ritual for the sacrifice of a high-level demon. The target of the summoning ritual is me. Chapter 108 The Origin of a Demon. Kilthuzid, excuse me, I need to confirm. What you're anonymously consigning is a summoning ritual for a high-level demonic sacrifice. The target of this ritual is yourself. Harvey couldn't believe it as he typed these words onto the magic brain device. This demon from another dimension wanted to sell a ritual to summon himself anonymously on the forum? Is this how all demons are? While waiting for a reply, Harvey couldn't help but ponder the meaning and purpose of his actions. The members of the Magic Web Forum were all powerful, high-level spellcasters, unlike the common people and foolish nobles rumored to be easily seduced and corrupted by demons. Furthermore, many of these members were skilled in arcane summoning techniques. Even if they attempted a ritual, they would likely be able to counter the summoned demons on the spot. This inner demon, in the magic web space, couldn't even handle a mid-level spellcaster like him, let alone the other members of the forum. Mindhunter, rest assured, there's no malicious intent in this deal, let alone any conspiracy. Mindhunter, coincidentally, in return for your introduction to the forum, I'm willing to share some of the demon race's hidden knowledge with you. Harvey's spirits immediately perked up, and he even sat up a bit straighter. Kilthuzid, I'm very interested in the ancient knowledge of the demon race. This is a very fair deal. Over the next hour, Harvey heard from the inner demon code-named Mindhunter the history and lore of this ancient demon race, completely overturning everything he had learned. While still a student at the Academy of the Undead, Harvey had developed a keen interest in ancient races like dragons, demons, and giants while studying the general course on the continent's extraordinary races. The disappearance of dragons and giants from the continent was partly due to their own internal struggles and partly due to the joint resistance of humans, demons, elves, dwarves, and other short-lived species. Demons are unique. They aren't native to the northern and southern continents, but rather transcendental beings invading from alternate dimensions. This invasion isn't completely unrestricted. It requires a human to initiate a summoning ritual, offering sacrifice to open the connection between the two worlds. The various sacrificial summoning rituals prevalent across the continent typically target lower-level demons, unable to communicate and inherently chaotic and bloodthirsty. This results in most rituals failing to control their targets, leading to horrific tragedy. This is the primary reason why all academic spellcasters are repeatedly warned against attempting summoning or sacrificial techniques. However, Harvey's inner demons revealed that the true purpose of summoned demons isn't to toy with humanity, tempt mortals to fall, or feast on bloody sacrifices. What they truly seek from their summoners is the intense desires they generate during the ritual, something called willpower. Demons are, in fact, transcendental beings that feed on willpower. This is why most of them use inducements and promises to stimulate the summoner's deepest desire for something, whether it be wealth, power, strength, or beauty. Harvey believes the answer to this question is highly plausible. Taking the example of this inner demon, whose original body resides in the Leeline plane, it's largely confirmed that demons don't really need to feed on such unholy flesh and blood sacrifices. Because the Leeline lacks any living entities, all wanderers exist in the form of mental energy. As for why he actively negotiated a summoning ritual involving his own sacrifice, the answer is even simpler. Due to the dual suppression of the Church and the Union in the real world, few dare to attempt to summon powerful higher-level demons. Even the occasional corrupted spellcaster with a less steadfast stance only summons easily manipulated lower-level demons. As a result, the willpower gained by the higher-level demons through summoning and sacrifice is dwindling. Unable to maintain their activity in the alien dimension through willpower, they are forced to fall into deep slumber. The frequent loss of control and evil deeds of lower-level demons in the real world, in turn, confirmed the evil and danger of the demon summoning ritual, ultimately leading to the dual collapse of the demon clan's reputation and survival. This is clearly a case of bad money driving out good. Haha. Harvey couldn't help but grumble at this thought. Even among the special higher-level demons like the Heart Demon, the Mindhunter is a unique and outlier. He loves observation and exploration, and is unwilling to give up easily on collecting and absorbing willpower. He frequently travels through the magic network space, constantly interacting with the wanderers of other races he encounters, cautiously extracting the willpower he needs from them. However, This collection method is too covert and cautious, and generally fails to arouse the strong desire in the recipients. Therefore, his gains have always been limited to maintaining basic mental activity, barely enough to prevent himself from falling into deep sleep. Initially, by actively contacting Harvey and successfully joining the Magic Network forum, the Mindhunter believed that he would now have a stable supply of willpower and would never worry about food and clothing. Who knew this spellcaster forum would completely block his innate perception? No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't absorb a single ounce of the willpower evoked by the forum members. Hearing the inner demon's slightly aggrieved remark about this, Harvey couldn't help but laugh. He also realized that the inner demon simply didn't understand the spellcaster forum's operating logic and principles. With his own terrifying spirit anchor, a time traveler, acting as a firewall, any location or perception from the magic web couldn't reach the forum itself. With this in mind, Harvey pressed the keypad on his magic brain, intending to respond to the Mindhunter's trade request. Kilthuzid, Mr. Inner Demon, I believe you no longer need to anonymously trade your summoning ritual. If you don't mind, I'm willing to make this deal directly with you. I'll personally perform the ritual and summon you, Mindhunter. I commend you, a kind and curious human spellcaster. Mr. Locator, I wonder what price I'll have to pay for your assistance this time? Harvey's lips curled slightly as he typed out his long-prepared trade request. Kilthuzid, it's simple. For this summoning ritual, I need you to bring a creature along. I want you to personally capture the creature you mentioned earlier, a creature that lives within the weave like you, a demon spirit. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 Meeting with Netizens. Since his first unexpected encounter with a Mindhunter, Harvey had harbored a deep fascination for the mysteries and strangeness of the weave, which the Mindhunter casually mentioned. Whether it was the coordinates of alien rifts, the remnants of spellcasters and ancient creatures, or the traces of weave creatures like the Jinn, for a spellcaster like Harvey, whose research primarily focused on the weave, these were all invaluable knowledge. A relentless pursuit of knowledge is the only way a spellcaster can stay on the right path in their magical pursuits. Having experienced the perilous alien rifts of the past, Harvey naturally hesitated to attempt to explore them alone, fearing a repeat encounter with such terrifying alien creatures. Without a powerful, legendary spellcaster like the Scorching Overlord to guide him, escaping unscathed would be a difficult task. The remnants of spellcasters and ancient creatures also required the collaborative efforts of multiple powerful spellcasters to ensure minimal safety. Therefore, the only bargain Harvey hoped to secure was the Jinn, the mysterious weave creatures mentioned by the Mindhunter. According to Mr. Heart Demon, the Jinn, creatures of the Leeline that have naturally formed since the birth of the Leeline dimension, are completely different from any living organisms known in reality. This is why Harvey has never found any information about Jinn in magical texts or travelogues of alternate dimensions. These are mystical creatures that even legendary spellcasters of all generations have failed to discover. The Heart Demons, capable of roaming the Leeline dimension for extended periods, actually know very little about the Jinn's origins. They are known only to feed on the pure magical energy emanating from the Leeline, are non-aggressive and malicious, and are extremely adept at concealing themselves, permanently residing within the dense energy contents of the Leeline. This is what Harvey is most concerned about, as he himself possesses a group of magical creatures in the real world that feed on pure magical energy-absorbing beetles. He vaguely feels that, despite being separated by different spatial planes, there must be some fundamental connection between the two. As for the dangers of the sacrificial summoning ritual, Harvey will not relax or underestimate it. No matter how harmless and well-intentioned the opponent may appear, this is still the summoning of a demonic projection from another dimension into the real world, so every precaution must be taken. Harvey's first safeguard is to conduct the summoning ritual within the magical testing grounds of the underground laboratory. 4 alchemy guardians equipped with beetle energy blocks will lock onto the summoning circle at all times. In the event of an accident, they will immediately release a powerful energy beam shockwave, ensuring that the circle will be destroyed instantly and the connection between the real world and the alternate dimension will be blocked. Harvey's second safeguard is to have Reiner prepare a hollow shell of his alchemy body. Drawing on his past knowledge of demons, this is an effective means of preventing the opponent's real projection from possessing him. Reiner will control the hollow shell of the alchemy body through a soul link, completing the summoning ritual remotely. If the opponent's malicious possession occurs, Reiner will immediately use the soul link pipeline to absorb the opponent's mental projection into the energy-focusing array of Unit 00 and decisively counterattack with a mental anchor. Even with these two powerful safeguards, Harvey still felt they weren't enough. He planned to use a modified 5th-level spell he'd learned and only tried once, Carol's Corrosion Field, during the summoning ritual. This would create a sealed space within the testing grounds filled with a powerful, corrosive, and poisonous mist. This would prevent the influx of lesser demons that accompanied the connection between the two spatial planes, which possessed physical flesh and blood. After completing all necessary preparations, Harvey contacted the Mind Hunter through the Spellcaster Forum again, requesting the offerings and the incantation for the summoning ritual. Mind Hunter, actually, the bloody offerings mentioned in those demon summoning rituals you've learned aren't essential to the ritual at all. Mind Hunter, besides knowing the target's true name, the only important consideration is the drawing of the magic circle connecting the two spatial planes. As for the offering, I can confidently say that if you can guarantee both of these, you can successfully summon a demon even if you place a bucket of pig bran at the offering location. Harvey thought, as expected. The bloody sacrifices recorded in the summoning ritual texts were most likely intended to scare off those greedy and ignorant, and also to intimidate those who would later attempt the summoning, instilling fear and deterring them. It's also possible that some hints and guidance from ancient higher-level demons were involved. After all, the fear evoked by bloody sacrifices was an effective means for demons to inspire the summoner to release their willpower. Harvey set the summoning ritual for midnight the next day, arranging for Reiner and Asdelin, two alchemical beings completely immune to psychic attacks, to assist in the ritual. The summoning array was still constructed using liquid mithril, the highest quality in magical conduction. Of course, the ritual offerings couldn't be replaced with a pig food Mr. Inner Demon had jokingly mentioned. After all, this was their first true online meeting. Out of courtesy and respect, Harvey had Igno and Asdelin retrieve some of the magical plants with soothing properties from their treasured storage, carefully grind them into powder, and burn them like incense during a religious mass. As the laboratory clock's hands past midnight, Harvey immediately unleashed the 5 rings of corrosion within the magic testing ground, solidifying the pervasive poisonous fog within the sealed room. Guardian alchemic beasts, each with their beetle energy beams activated, stood at each of the 4 corners, their crimson eyes fixed on the summoning circle in the center of the room. An alchemical cyborg stood before the circle, its back connected to a metal energy tube that ran through a groove in the floor to the outside of the room and ultimately secured to a slot at Reiner's waist. Reiner himself sat next to the Unit 0 energy ring, maintaining a charged connection. Harvey planned to first attempt to complete the summoning using the phonograph stone to chant the ritual spell on his behalf. If that failed, he would have the poison-immune Arstalin enter the testing ground and chant the spell himself. Since the alchemical cyborg, without his soul, could not speak, a third person would be needed to perform the most crucial step of the ritual. The Mind Hunter had already taught Harvey how to pronounce his true name in demonic language, but had carefully avoided translating it. Harvey understood this perfectly. Once a demon's true name was deciphered, it could easily put them in a passive position. The Church Shivan possessed a powerful secret technique that could lock onto a demon's true name and directly kill them with divine spells. Using the sound recording magic stone instead of chanting the spell worked immediately. Reiner manipulated his alchemical prosthesis to infuse the summoning circle with pure magical energy. After fully activating it, Harvey could clearly sense a surge of energy escaping from the magical web space within the laboratory. After repeating the summoning spell 3 times, the circle erupted with a thick, dark red mist, gradually converging above the circle into an invisible vortex. Then, the vortex split, outlining an irregular, door-shaped cavity. A pair of slender, pale hands, far longer than an average person's, slowly emerged from the cavity, grasping at its edges, as if attempting to escape. Immediately afterwards, an illusory, twisted crimson figure emerged from the void. A slit resembling an eyeball suddenly appeared in the distorted figure's head, and a cascading sound, as if countless voices were speaking simultaneously, echoed. "Huh? Which of you is Mr. Kilthuzid?" the figure asked, its long, strangely twisted arms folded comically across its chest. "Why is there so much fog here? Did we catch fire?" Chapter 110 Living Source Code. Which one of you is Mr. Kilthuzid? The summoned inner demon asked in confusion. "Is there a fire here?" It's so smoky. The people in the laboratory, who were all on high alert, fell into an awkward silence. Harvey breathed a sigh of relief and walked to the ventilation control lever outside the magic test field. He raised his hand and pulled the instrument control lever, quickly sucking out the corrosive and poisonous mist that filled the test field. He walked to the glass door, put his head slightly close to the transparent glass, and whispered to the inside, "Mr. Inner Demon, I am Kilthuzid. Nice to meet you." The demon's illusory and distorted figure flashed in an instant, and he came to the glass door in an instant. Like Harvey, he also put his head comically against the glass and greeted Harvey through the glass. "I'm glad to see you, too, Mr. Kilthuzid." He blinked rapidly at the slit in his head that resembled a single A, and said with a sigh, "I can sense the joy and curiosity emanating from you, which gives me a lot of willpower to absorb." "I'm very grateful for that," Harvey couldn't help but secretly complain in his heart. It turned out to be a door-to-door feast with a clear purpose. I hoped he hadn't forgotten the previous deal. The inner demon seemed to immediately sense Harvey's thoughts and let out a good-natured laugh. "Haha, what do you mean by door-to-door feast? Are you going to hold a welcome banquet for my arrival? That would make me a little embarrassed." The demon's chest and abdomen suddenly split open, a crack larger than the eyeball in his head. He waved his twisted, slender arm and reached straight into his chest and abdomen, pulling out a transparent, soft sphere from within. "This is the promised gift. I certainly won't forget it. As for the living demon you requested, well, I specially captured an adult. They survive longer in the real world than juveniles, making them more convenient for your long-term observation and experimentation." Harvey, through the glass door, caught sight of the sphere held in the inner demon's hand and was instantly captivated. It was a soft, completely transparent sphere, about the size of an ostrich egg. It seemed to be filled with some unknown liquid, and within it, a strange, tadpole-like creature slowly swam. "Is this a living demon?" The creature's appearance was clearly different from the demonic creatures Harvey had imagined. It was simply a giant, large-headed tadpole. He tilted his head to nod slightly at Azdarin, who was standing by, and he immediately understood and pulled the door to the laboratory. The glass door separating Harvey and the inner demon slid open. Harvey reached forward and carefully took the giant drop of water containing the demon from the inner demon's hands. This contains a unique liquid form of magical energy from the energy pipelines of the magical web. Magic spirits can only survive in this liquid, just like fish cannot survive without water. However, liquid magical energy will gradually dissipate and evaporate in the real world, so it can only last for about 3 days at most. Harvey nodded, grateful for Mr. Mindhunter's kind explanation. "Mr. Inner Demon, then you don't mind if I conduct this experiment immediately?" Regarding the analysis of creatures like magic spirits, the other shrugged in understanding. "Of course, for you short-lived species, time is money. I fully understand. Please let me know if you need my cooperation." Harvey led him to the laboratory bench outside the laboratory. Reiner had already been there, preparing all the necessary materials and equipment. Harvey picked up a crystal-clear beetle ore and handed it to Inner Demon. "Look, this solid mineral, condensed entirely from pure magical energy, is essentially the same source as the liquid magical energy that contains the demon spirit." Harvey then demonstrated a process of the magic gun activating the energy beam. And after being transformed through the magic circle and spell inscriptions, this pure magical energy is transformed from solid to gaseous energy beam. Thus, I suspect that the magical energy that pervades the magic network itself exists in 3 different forms: liquid, gaseous, and solid. The inner demon held the beetle ore in his hand up to the one eye for closer inspection. "Interesting idea. As expected, only human spellcasters could possess such advanced wisdom and creativity." He pointed to the beetle that struggled and twisted on the instrument stand. "So, you suspect that the existence of the demon spirit and this beetle is the key to transforming the 3 forms of magical energy." Harvey smiled in agreement. It was such a pleasure to exchange academic knowledge with an ancient intelligent race. As Dallin and Reiner clearly needed to keep a close eye on this alien guest, so Harvey had to conduct all the experimental procedures himself. "The purpose of my experiment is to verify that, since inscriptions can alter the form of magical energy, if I engrave miniature magic circles or inscriptions on the bodies of the demon spirits and beetles, can I transform them directly into living energy conversion devices?" The inner demon immediately burst into laughter at this fantastic experimental idea. "It's truly fascinating. It's a pity that I can't read your inner thoughts. After all, your mental anchor is too solid. I really want to know how many such shocking ideas you have. Harvey ignored the inner demon's slightly impolite words and gently raised his hand to gesture towards him. Then let's complete this interesting experiment together. Harvey and the Mind Hunter gathered around the experimental table, placed the beetle ore and the living demon spirit into a transparent crystal cover, and manipulated the mage's hand to begin drawing the spell inscriptions remotely. Harvey, who had memorized these inscriptions by heart through study and memorization during his apprenticeship, each symbolized a unique magical meaning, used to express the magical energy within himself or the surroundings in various forms. Numerous symbols represented energy increase, decrease, balance, coordination, and transformation. Occasionally, more complex symbols carried unique, multiple meanings, representing single elements, energy annihilation, and trembling waves. The creation and refinement of spells by legendary spellcasters were essentially innovations and adjustments to the inscriptions. A fist-sized piece of beetle ore was quickly inscribed with a vast array of inscriptions. Simply connecting them with specific connectors formed a completely new, miniature magic circle. The inner demon suddenly raised a hand and placed it on Harvey's arm, which was manipulating the mage's hand, whispering, "Wait a moment. I think we can add a new inscription symbol, with that." He casually dipped his finger into an unsealed bottle of magic solvents and quickly drew a symbol on the silver-white metal lab table, a symbol Harvey had never seen before. The meaning of this inscription symbol is, Harvey frowned slightly, unsure of his judgment. A fusion of the balance and harmony inscriptions? But much simplified, the inner demon smiled and said, an ancient meaning, representing order. The balance and harmony inscriptions must have derived from this. Harvey nodded in agreement and immediately added the ancient inscription symbol to the drawing, quickly completing the chain of inscriptions. The miniature magic circle on the surface of the beetle ore instantly solidified, reflecting a dazzling light through the crystal glass cover. This light was fleeting, and the beetle ore itself disappeared into the crystal cover in an instant. A strange phenomenon occurred. The inscriptions that were solidified and linked by the magic circle were now freed from the ore carrier, floating freely in the crystal cover, and began to swim slowly and erratically like mayflies. The experienced mind hunter immediately concluded, the ore has transformed from solid energy into gaseous energy. Otherwise, these symbols wouldn't have remained within the shield. Your experimental hypothesis is correct. Harvey, however, keenly noticed a gradual shift in the inscribed ephemera. Look, they're adjusting their movements, actively forming their own formations. It's order. Mr. Inner Demon, that last inscription you had me add has altered their patterns, causing these revived inscriptions to line up like soldiers. The inner demon might simply have thought it was an interesting experiment in energy transformation. But to Harvey, a time traveler, these revived inscriptions, now possessing their own consciousness, held a completely different meaning. Their regular arrangement and fixed combinations, in his eyes, resembled the periodic table or a primitive computer language. They possessed an unparalleled beauty of order. Chapter 111 Wish Power Buffet. As Dallin and the demon mind hunter walked side by side through the streets of the frontier territory, Harvey had thoughtfully equipped Mr. Inner Demon, who had come from afar, with an alchemical prosthetic suit capable of directly housing a psychic projection. While its functionality differed slightly from other models, lacking auxiliary functions or combat capabilities, it could only function as a walking device. After all, the residents of the territory were already familiar with various alchemical beasts, and even the occasional undead beasts and horses that appeared late at night were easily ignored. However, the inner demon's true form was too bizarre and terrifying, easily frightening ordinary people when out in public, so it was safer to transfer it to the alchemical prosthetic suit. Mr. As Dallin, why are these people willing to do these things without supervision? The inner demon kept asking questions, probing everything he found strange in the territory. As Dallin was the most patient of Harvey's group. After all, he and the demons were immortals, and he didn't think talking was a waste of time or life. You mean the voluntary work of cleaning the streets near their homes? That really doesn't require supervision. They just want to make the area around their homes fresh and clean so they don't slip on the ice from the melting snow, he explained, pointing to the two-story cement buildings on both sides of the street that looked like they were copied and pasted. In the early stages of the construction of the territory, the areas where residents live were divided into blocks. The Lord called it a community system. This planning and management method is very scientific and effective. The inner demon was silent for a moment, as if trying to understand the strange new words that came out of Asdalin's mouth. I can feel the flourishing willpower from the people working spontaneously on these streets. It comes from their own very positive emotions, including anticipation, satisfaction, and joy. As Dallin chuckled and said, "This is why the Lord asked you to go out. It's not just to invite you to visit the territory, but also to make it easier for you to collect up the willpower you need." Talking about this topic, the inner demon immediately expressed his heartfelt gratitude. "Indeed, Mr. Kilthuzad's help to me in this regard far exceeds the small price I paid him." Then he sighed with a hint of regret. "What a pity. So far, all the willpower I have absorbed has been positive emotions. Even those workers who went out to work in such cold weather and heavy snow haven't released a trace of resentment or dissatisfaction. It's like having a sumptuous banquet in front of me, but I find that they all taste the same. Although it's still delicious, I always feel that the taste layering is not rich enough." As Dallin was thankful he didn't have a physical body, otherwise he'd have wanted to roll his eyes. He couldn't help but think of Lord Harvey's oft-repeated catchphrase, "It's good enough to have one. What else do you want? A bicycle?" The two chatted and laughed as they strolled through the bustling residential and market areas. They happened to pass a patrol of defense soldiers passing by. Ha ha. I finally sense a hint of negativity. Not bad, not bad." The inner demon gazed at the neatly formed soldiers, gradually receding into the distance, then turned to Dallin and chuckled. "What? Negative emotions among the soldiers?" As Dallin immediately sensed something was amiss. Having experienced 2 assassination attempts, he was now a little nervous about such a situation. Recently, when he and Pierce were investigating and purging the army, he'd always felt like everyone looked like a spy sent from the south. But as Dallin's sensitivity was understandable. After all, soldiers were the only armed personnel in the territory. Any problems within them posed the greatest threat to the Lord's safety. He immediately asked the inner demon in a serious tone, "Are you sure that there's a strong negative emotion among the soldiers from earlier? Mr. Inner Demon, please tell me exactly what's going on. Is it hatred? Resentment? Or greed?" The inner demon was stunned by his seriousness, and after a pause, he quipped, "None of those." He pointed at a young soldier at the head of the retreating column, clearly a junior officer. That strong negative emotion is coming from that young soldier, a deep sense of loss and sadness. From his thoughts, I understand that he confessed his feelings to a girl he admired last night, only to receive a response that she simply treated him like a brother. As Dallin slipped and nearly fell flat on his face on the icy road. It seems that this negative emotion is indeed very strong. The 2 armies currently formally formed in the territory now number nearly 4,000 men in total, the majority of whom are young refugees from the northern wastes. 80% of these are young and strong bachelors. It seemed the next step was to consider how to resolve the marriage and love issues of these single soldiers, to prevent unnecessary unrest and chaos within the army. As Dallin silently made a mental note of this matter. Mr. Inner Demon, why don't you come with me to visit the defense camp? I'll show you these thirsty bachelors, drilled like cattle daily, and absorb their resentment. After sending Mr. Inner Demon, who came from another dimension, out of the castle, Harvey independently conducted further research on the living inscription. After all, the upcoming experiments would require the 2 completely different knowledge structures he had experienced in his 2 human lives, and the inner demon would be of no help in this regard. After successfully transforming the demon spirit into a living inscription, Harvey once again confirmed the feasibility of his experimental plan. If successful, he would no longer have to rely solely on the 2 massive planetary energy gathering arrays within the military factory to power his various magic production projects. Instead, the previously untapped magic stone veins beneath the castle could be transformed directly into a primary energy source, powering all energy-driven alchemical creatures and production equipment within the territory. Alchemical beings like Reiner and Dallin would then no longer need to constantly connect to pipes for recharging, and the entire territory's magic network would achieve a powerful function similar to wireless charging. The Magic Net Spellcaster Forum could also undergo a major upgrade, no longer constrained by the capacity and frequency of communication transmissions, while also enabling the forum's feedback and reception to become fully intelligent, creating a true Internet of Magical Things. This plan had long been in Harvey's mind, but he had previously struggled to find a practical solution. Now, he had the source code, the living inscription, and the server was already ready, the underground magic stone veins. All that was missing was the final step, himself, an entry-level programmer who had only briefly learned C in college. Chapter 112 Magical Potato Server. Harvey, as Dallin, and Reiner stood in the newly reinforced underground magic stone mine. "Sir, is this really safe from accidents?" Reiner watched as hundreds of miniature wolf spider beasts crawled back and forth across the thick magic stone crystal pillars in the mine, using their magical energy to guide the living inscriptions floating in the air to cling to the crystals. This is directly beneath the castle. What if? Reiner still felt a lingering fear as he recalled the instantaneous explosion during the beetle magic stone experiment that had directly blown off a piece of his breastplate. Harvey held up a crystal plate framed with mithril and said with a soothing smile, "Don't worry. The vast majority of runes in these living inscriptions are designed for stability and guidance. If any energy transmission anomalies occur, they will actively conduct the excess energy to deeper layers of the earth. If the caster's mental power is likened to the signal transceiver of a wireless network, and the positioning magic patterns are the data terminals of a local area network, then establishing a server matrix is essential for data transmission across physical distances. However, no single magical network energy carrier can handle the data volume of a magic internet with tens of thousands of people connected simultaneously. The data transmission limit of a planetary-level energy focusing array is less than 100 people, and it also has to maintain the operation of the magical network transmission array. Network congestion is common, and occasionally overheating and shutdowns occur. But Harvey understood the concept of true internet data transmission. After all, in his previous life, he was a level 10 keyboard surfer, and he knew full well that Earth's internet data could be described as a digital torrent. Compared to the forum he currently founded, it was like a drop in the ocean compared to the vast ocean. A planetary energy focusing array is, at best, just a ripe potato from Ubisoft, but Harvey's goal is to build at least a potato plantation. At this point, a natural, massive vein of magic stone, capable of storing vast quantities of living inscriptions, is the optimal solution for the experiment. When Mr. Inner Demon left, he arranged a time for his next visit. Arstalin abruptly changed the subject. He promised to bring more living spirits with him next time. Harvey nodded in satisfaction. Apparently, this dinner at your door visit pleased the high-ranking demon so much that he stayed in the real world until he could no longer maintain his mental projection before reluctantly bidding farewell. Living spirits are far more suitable for transforming inscriptions than energy-absorbing beetles, so naturally, the more, the better. The three of them toiled in the mine until midnight, finally directing their mini-wolf spiders to attach all the living inscriptions to the magic stone crystal pillars. Harvey lifted the crystal plate in his hand and attempted to infuse it with the magical energy from his fingertips. After a few seconds, the crystal plate lit up with a faint white light, and mercury tadpoles began to appear on its surface, resembling those on the crystal display of the magic brain. They slowly swam across the screen, eventually converging to form concrete words. The wireless network login version of the magic brain device had been a success. However, it was currently limited to the area covered by the mine server, barely guaranteeing wireless network coverage within the territory. Beyond that distance, data transmission would still rely on the forum set up by the main body in the magic network space. "Sir, look at me," Reiner suddenly exclaimed, pointing at the charging slots of his own and Asdalin's alchemical prosthesis. I feel like I'm charging. Oh my god, I'm not plugged in." From the magic stone mine crystal column, several thin, pure white threads, like tentacles, naturally floated and touched the charging slots of the two alchemical life forms, connecting them to the mine crystal column. Harvey smiled calmly and said, "Don't worry, this is what I said, wireless charging technology. In the future, you don't have to plug in cables next to the energy gathering array to charge regularly. As long as you walk and move within the territory, you will receive the magic energy transmitted from underground at all times." Asdalin couldn't help but admire. This is magic and knowledge, the value and use that truly transcends the times. This is nothing, just some basic functions. Harvey was a little proud. After the living inscriptions have completed covering all the mineral vein crystal columns, there will be more and better functions for us to research and develop and use. By then, whether it is a military factory or other civilian production workshops in the territory, alchemical beasts can be invested in large quantities. Only a few human workers are needed to operate them to complete super high production and manufacturing tasks. The magic bullets, which have always been limited by the output of raw materials, no longer need to wait for a long time for the energy-absorbing beetles to reproduce and produce or for decomposition. He can directly use the magic energy-filling technology to produce bullets in large quantities, and no longer worry about the army's daily training consumption. Harvey stared at the crystal tablet in his hand, which maintained a healthy wireless connection to the mineral vein server, and began to envision his upcoming forum upgrade plan. Besides the usual information exchange and anonymous consignment sections, he could add a few more forum features. New member access could be slightly relaxed, but the recommendation and sponsorship mechanism for founding members would still need to be retained. After all, they were the first to benefit from participating in the forum and would naturally maintain strict controls and oversight. Harvey didn't want the forum to be flooded with high-level spellcasters with hostile attitudes after opening up membership. Most of these people were organized. If a group of rabid church priests were accidentally admitted one day and suddenly shouted "Glory be to you" during a meeting, that would be an awkward situation. However, the backgrounds of forum members were complex, and the criteria for inviting and recommending new members was relatively subjective and biased, often favoring spellcasters with whom they already had a good relationship. This, in turn, led to the proliferation of small, closely knit factions within the forum. It seems that we need to establish a unified set of standards for joining the forum. Harvey couldn't help but curl up his lips, thinking of the account registration questionnaires launched by some social platforms that he often hung out on in his previous life. This is a very practical and fair way to screen members. The first criterion that must be determined is that only high-level spellcasters are eligible to join. Those of intermediate level and below are just leaks. Harvey feels that there is nothing to gain from them. Their knowledge reserves in many aspects are even worse than his own. Secondly, Harvey immediately thought of the accident when he was attacked by witch hunters, and the evil deeds of witch hunters who slaughtered wizard apprentices that aroused the hatred of all forum members. He had to emphasize one more point: churches and dogs are not allowed to join. Finally, he can also add a little personal opinion. Humph, don't some orthodox spellcasters look down on necromancers? Then here is a test question: what is your attitude towards the necromancer faction of spellcasters? Chapter 113 Membership Instructions and Questionnaire. In the elven city of Lorraine, the Golden Forest, nestled within the Misty Mountains, stood a pure white wizard's tower nestled amidst the crowns of towering golden trees. This magic brain instrument has been sent from Dalius for your future use in the forum, Archdruid Kirill Randy said calmly, pointing to a delicate alchemical instrument on a bark desk. Another high elf, tall and slender, with a handsome face that belied his age, sat at the desk. He gently stroked the brass body of the magic brain with his slender fingers. Is there still no way to trace the manufacturer of the instrument from Dalius? Kirill Randy pondered for a moment before slowly answering. They are manufactured in advance in the form of parts, and then sent to Dalius from different countries and chambers of commerce. They are assembled by the Alchemy Exploration Society branch workshop in Dalius, and then stored in the Dragonstone Chamber of Commerce for consignment. He paused and added, the Dragonstone Chamber of Commerce is backed by the Sereth family of Orland. We can't offend them by rash investigations. Moreover, to purchase the magic brain instrument, you must directly show the forum's exclusive code name. Each code name is limited to purchasing one instrument. Aragorn, start the magic brain instrument, log in and create a unique code name for yourself. Now that the forum has opened up membership permissions, as long as you pass the membership questionnaire, you can directly join the forum. The high elf Aragorn nodded, agreeing not to continue to dwell on the secret background of the forum. He reached out and took out a light green magic stone from the herb bag on his waist and stuffed it into the card slot of the magic brain instrument. Hello, respected spellcaster, welcome to the Magic Network Spellcaster Forum. On behalf of the administrator Mr. Turing, I greet you. Kirill Randy exclaimed in surprise, bent over and approached the crystal screen of the magic brain, muttering in confusion, I usually log into the forum, why have I never received a welcome speech? Aragorn chuckled, maybe this is a special treatment for new members. The characters on the crystal screen continued to scroll, revealing new text content. Before taking the forum membership questionnaire, please carefully read the Spellcaster Forum's membership guidelines. This is to help new members understand the specific requirements for joining the forum and the expected rights and responsibilities. The high elf whistled frivolously, huh? This is the most rigorous and official, secret underground organization I have ever seen. Uncle Kirill, I think you must like this old-fashioned communication atmosphere. The Archdruid snorted a little annoyed, not wanting to talk. He walked straight to the window of the treehouse wizard tower and urged himself, answer the questions as soon as possible and complete the membership requirements. As of now, I am the only elf in the Spellcaster Forum. I am outnumbered and too passive, Didn't we reach a private agreement with those burrowing dwarves who love to dig holes to help each other? Aragorn asked doubtfully. Could it be that those shorty guys have betrayed their promise again? Kilrandy tilted his head and explained in a low voice, not really. Human spellcasters make up too large a proportion of the forum, and they're often marginalized and suppressed. However, our interests differ, so it's better to have more of our own. The young high-level druid nodded in understanding and pressed the button on the magic brain again, entering the forum membership question and answer session. Excuse me, do you accept the free academic exchange atmosphere within the forum? Please select yes or no. Interesting. This is a basic test of attitude, so of course I should choose yes. Excuse me, do you agree that all knowledge within the forum should be open and shared? I'm afraid forum members don't actually do this privately, but they naturally agree on the surface. Excuse me, which identities do you think should be inappropriate or ineligible to join the forum? You can select multiple options. Aragorn narrowed his eyes slightly, looking at the several options that appeared below, and couldn't help but frown. Demons? Seafolk? Giants? Radiant priests and necromancers. He couldn't help but turn his head to look at his uncle, wondering, Uncle Carol, are there really members of these ancient races on the forum? Why don't they just include dragons and demons? Kilrandy couldn't help but lean over as well, pondering for a moment. There are indeed suspected members of many other ancient races on the forum. We previously strongly suspected one of them was a demon from another dimension. He coughed lightly and rationally judged, considering that the administrator, Mr. Turing, is very likely a member of one of these ancient races. I suggest you keep the first few options and exclude the lower class ones. Aragorn nodded obediently and typed, marking the candidates ineligible for the forum as radiant priests and necromancers. Excuse me, what are your thoughts on the forum's core principle of inclusion? Will it discriminate against forum members based on their real-world identities? The young high elf once again turned to the archdruid for help. Uncle, are you sure this isn't a consultant contract for the Spellcasters Union? Kilrandy angrily grumbled. Real contradictions are real contradictions. Even if you're pretending in the forum, you have to act harmoniously. What's so hard about superficial work? He brushed away Aragorn's hand from the magic computer and decisively pressed the no button. Then, he tapped the OK button, concluding the short questionnaire. The mercury tadpoles on the crystal screen rapidly twisted and reorganized, instantly appearing with a line of crimson text. We're sorry, your attitude and perspective are inconsistent with the core purpose of this forum, and you've failed the forum questionnaire. What? The two high elves froze in their tracks. On the outskirts of the capital of Orland, atop a towering mage tower, two elegant, slender spellcasters sat side by side at a luxurious mahogany desk. Two delicate brass magic brain devices sat side by side on the desk. Their crystal screens flashed the forum codenames of their two spellcasters, Astrologer and Eye of Illusion. An owl-like spell messenger, flapping its wings, crashed through the open window of the mage tower. The astrologer rose and approached it. As the messenger crumbled in trash, he pulled out a yellowed slip of paper. How do I answer the third question on the membership questionnaire? If you learned a forum member's true identity in the real world, would you unconditionally keep it secret? Reply quickly. Urgent. The astrologer handed the slip of paper to the Eye of Illusion, and the two exchanged a smile. This question seems specially prepared for those of us who have already met in real life and know a person's background and identity. The astrologer slowly walked to the shelf beside the desk, removed a crystal ball with a dimly modeled surface, and gently stroked it. My destiny star is showing some subtle fluctuations. I suspect that if I don't follow my heart and answer the questionnaire, I will most likely be targeted by the forum and marked as an unqualified or suspicious member. The Eye of Illusion asked uncertainly. Do you think the forum can locate our position in the real world through the connection between members in the magic network? The astrologer chuckled non-committally. What's the big deal? Compared to the knowledge and benefits gained in the forum, taking such a small risk is completely acceptable. Write him a reply and say that this questionnaire should be regarded as a magical contract with rule-bound effect. Answer all questions according to your heart. Chapter 114, Inquisition. Harvey sat at the Magic Brains forum server, watching the flashing red dots on the crystal screen. Each one represented a new member's failed questionnaire, rejected by the intelligent review system he had just programmed. No. How can you fail just by copying the answers? Isn't the forum's core purpose always pinned to the top, prominently displayed in the messaging interface? Has anyone actually read it? He stood up, somewhat annoyed, and paced back and forth in the lab. Okay, you're a bunch of hypocritical people, both in real life and online. You say one thing and do another, right? You promised freedom, tolerance, openness, anonymity, but now you've really relaxed membership permissions, and yet most don't meet the forum's membership standards. What's the difference between granting membership and not granting membership? Wait. Harvey seemed to have a sudden realization. He quickly returned to the magic brain and clicked on one of the multiple choice questions in the questionnaire. He was shocked to discover that 90% of the new members had failed this single question, which Harvey had smuggled in with his own agenda. Church priests and necromancers are generally considered ineligible to join the spellcaster forum. This is blatant professional discrimination. Too much? Humph. You look down on necromancers, your fellow spellcasters, right? Fine, I'll find a way to get the contact information of high-ranking necromancers, bring in a large number of them, and then we'll bully you, you damned hypocrites. In the Papal States, the City of Grace, Gors. Bishop Tosa Ismail, clutching a sacred tome inlaid with gold and gemstones, ascended the circular staircase of the Cathedral of Grace, descending deep beneath the church. The Cathedral of Grace, second only to the Cathedral of Radiance in the City of Grace's grandeur, sits in a low valley within the city of Gors, beneath which lies a massive, naturally formed sinkhole. This sinkhole was created during the initial construction of the Papal States, following an unexpected natural earthquake. Deep enough to accommodate at least 4 wizard towers, it measures over 30 feet in diameter. The surrounding stone walls, reinforced over the years by the faithful, have become a vast underground chamber. There's no such thing as dim light here. A large hole in the high dome serves as a skylight, allowing light to stream directly into the subterranean realm at noon, illuminating the entire space like a beam of divine light from the kingdom of God. As a priest of the bishop rank, Tosa Ismail could use the divine art of flight to descend from above, but out of respect and fear for the gods, the use of divine arts is forbidden throughout the City of Grace. Therefore, he always walked from the church to the subterranean realm, slowly descending the seemingly endless circular stone staircase, though he never carefully counted the number of steps he took. If the Cathedral of Radiance is Gors's most magnificent building, a symbol of the church's piety and divinity, then Saints' Gap, nestled beneath the Church of Grace, is the church's true and most secure core. The headquarters of the Inquisition, the church's most vital armed force for maintaining the rule of believers, is located here. Upon reaching the base of Saints' Gap, following the long spiral staircase, one can see several inquisitors with awakened bloodline talent standing guard almost every 50 steps. Numerous inquisitor officers reside in the mechanical chambers on either side of the stone corridor, constantly on call. Many inquisitors assigned to guard Saints' Gap, once assigned to guard it, will spend their lives in the darkness beneath, never to return to the surface to bask in the divine light. This wasn't Ismail's first time here, so no one tried to stop him. Instead, they watched him silently as he made his way towards the deepest depths of Saints' Gap. The bishop walked on, passing the inquisitors' living quarters, the church's archives, the incarceration areas for heretics and the fallen, before finally stopping at the far end of the Privy Council. This area was accessible only to priests of bishop rank and above. All research and analysis of the church's divine arts and sacred artifacts originated here, and it was personally overseen by the Grand Inquisitor of the Inquisition. He paused for a moment at the Privy Council's gate, then turned left into a narrow corridor. He soon arrived at the entrance to a prayer room. The inquisitor guarding the door immediately raised his sword, clenched his fist, and knelt on one knee in greeting. Bishop Ismail. Ismail nodded slightly. Is His Holiness in the prayer room now? The inquisitor stood up swiftly and whispered, His Holiness has been waiting for you for a while. Ismail perked up at the words, raised his hand, pushed open the prayer room door, and stepped inside. This secret prayer room, located deep within the secret area of the agency, wasn't very large. Ismail, walking around a simple wooden screen at the entrance, could immediately take in the entire interior. There were no unnecessary decorations or furniture, only gray-black stone bricks on the floor. At one end, against the wall, stood a simple stone platform, upon which stood a row of brass lamps. The flickering flames from the lamps illuminated the room, illuminating the figure of a hunchbacked old man prostrating himself in prayer before the platform. Your Holiness, I'm here. The hunchbacked old man seemed hard of hearing and remained prostrated on the ground without a response. Ismail didn't repeat his call, but stood calmly behind him, awaiting his response. After a long moment, the old man suddenly trembled slightly, as if coming to his senses. He sighed deeply, slowly straightening up and whispering, "What time is it now?" "Just past noon, Your Majesty." Bishop Ismail stepped forward, helped His Holiness to his feet, and considerately brushed the dust from his grey robe. The Pope, dressed like an ordinary low-ranking priest, coughed softly, raised his hand, pointed at the burning brass lamp on the stone platform, and muttered to himself, "7 days ago, while praying, I noticed something was amiss with the lamp of revelation. That's why I summoned you." He released Ismail's hand and slowly walked over to the lamps on the stone platform. His withered palm slowly brushed over the flames of the row of lamps, causing the once small candles to burst into a brilliant golden light. The light flashed briefly, then gradually returned to normal as the Pope gently lowered his hand. Ismail hesitated for a moment before asking, "The lamp of divine revelation has shown no signs of abnormality in 100 years. Is that true?" The Pope chuckled and interrupted the bishop's question. "Are you trying to say that my eyesight is blurry and I'm mistaken?" He turned to meet the bishop's gaze. His old, wrinkled face narrowed, and a sharp gleam suddenly shone. "I'm not mistaken. Each of these 12 lamps represents a demon of absolute evil and depravity. Since God has given me this revelation, it means that an ancient, superior demon, marked by our Lord, has been summoned into the world." Chapter 115 Single-player game. As night fell, Copperhammer finished his work for the day and rode his dwarf goat back to his residence from the underground mineral laboratory in the cave city. "Copperhammer, how about joining me for a banquet tonight?" Nolly, about to leave, stopped his brother as he was about to enter his study. "Those fiefdom nobles are coming to the city, and I need to have a good chat with them." Throughout breadth of the hills, the dwarven land, dwarven nobles often travel from their fiefdoms to the capital, the cave city. As the current leader of the cave dwarves, Nolly was busy with social engagements at night. "I won't go. Seeing those nobles obsessed with money, constantly squinting at their share of the ore trade, really bothers me." Rather than engaging in phony pleasantries at a cocktail party, he preferred to quietly sit in front of his magic brain instrument with a beer in hand, enter the spellcaster forum, and engage in in-depth conversation with the members. Moreover, the forum had suddenly issued a mysterious announcement 3 days ago, announcing the launch of a new forum feature that day, and Copperhammer had been lucky enough to be selected as one of the members tasked with testing the new feature. What an honor. It clearly signified that the spellcaster forum and its administrator, Mr. Turing, recognized his contributions to the forum as a founding member, as well as his personal standing and prestige within it. Without even waiting for the waiter to bring ale and dinner, the dwarf anxiously sat down before the magic brain, tapping away, entering his unique username to log in. Sure enough, the new forum section was already floating at the top of the chatroom interface, nestled behind sections like public chat, information exchange, and anonymous consignment. Magic Tower? What does that mean? Why such a commonplace name for a new section? Several member usernames flash on the crystal screen, indicating that forum members were requesting private chats with Copperhammer. But he didn't have time to deal with them right now. He flicked the button to select Magic Tower, and a phantasmal image instantly flashed across the crystal screen. A simple silver border floated to the center, and a line of text slowly appeared within it. "Dear forum member, Mr. Frost Giant, congratulations on qualifying for the Magic Tower beta test. Next, I will explain in detail how to use and control this new feature." Copperhammer couldn't help but chuckle, shaking his head in a state of smug pride. In ancient times, whose exact year cannot be traced, a magnificent magic tower existed within some unknown and dangerous ruins. Why are you telling a story? Is this the forum hinting at some hidden history? Copperhammer casually accepted the beer offered by the waiter, took a sip absently, and patiently continued reading. Powerful spellcasters from all over the world gathered beneath this bizarre magical structure, hoping to climb this tower, soaring into the clouds, and obtain the mysterious magical treasure buried at its summit. And you, one of these spellcasters, are you willing to embark on this arduous and dangerous journey to the summit? The dwarf narrowed his eyes, staring intently at the text appearing on the crystal screen, muttering to himself, they want me to play a character in this story and complete this adventure on his behalf." He then couldn't help but chuckle. Isn't this just a magical web version of a pretend adventure game? Nolly's son and those little brats will surely love it. He decisively pressed the options button to start, and the illusory tower scene immediately shifted to a scene within the tower's interior. Adventurer, please choose your character class first. Arcane, Elemental, Bloodline, Nature, Death, Fate, Copperhammer smiled knowingly. The numerous options clearly hinted at the different common factions of spellcasters in the real world. But why join Bloodline and Death? What kind of trashy classes like Bloodline Knights and Necromancers have the right to exist alongside Elemental and Arcane casters? The dwarf himself was a high-level Elemental Mage specializing in Earth magic, so he instinctively decided to choose this class for this virtual adventure. The image on the crystal screen changed again, revealing a stack of virtual cards, beautifully painted with patterns and text, before him. Are you asking me to choose my character's proficiency spells? Why are they all first-level spells? The form expects me to climb this wizard's ruins with these novice spellcasters' cantrips? Absurd. Despite his merciless complaints, Tong Chu's hands diligently selected elemental spells he was familiar with. Earth Shield is good, it can both defend and hinder enemies. Quicksand is also fine, and Slow should also be used. Falling Rocks is considered a slightly offensive first-level spell, so use that. The dwarf picked and chose, filling all 10 previously reserved spell slots at the bottom of the cards. Alright. Let's begin. Let me see for myself just how formidable the monsters and enemies in this magic tower are. 10 minutes later, Tong Chu's hand trembled slightly on the buttons of the magic brain, his face flushed slightly, but it wasn't from the alcohol. It was out of anger. The spellcaster he was playing had just entered the magic tower when he collapsed on the first floor. Indeed, his adventure lasted a mere 10 minutes before the spellcaster's defeat and death. Guarding the first floor was a metal monster that, judging by the image, didn't appear particularly formidable. Copperhammer, judging by its appearance, was an alchemical creation, devoid of any magical attacks. Confidently, he constructed an earth shield and played a card representing rockfall, intending to directly bombard the opponent's energy core, instantly crippling it. Damn it! Damn it! How could an alchemical beast possess a built-in thorn shield? And its physical armor is so thick. Earth spells can't penetrate its double defenses. Copperhammer exhausted all 10 spell cards in his hand, but failed to defeat it, ultimately succumbing to a brutal physical attack from the alchemical beast. He refused to accept this. There are countless spells that can counter alchemical artifacts, but unfortunately, he chose only spells from the same family. He could only blame himself for underestimating his opponent. Another round. This time, he decided to make good use of his limited card slots, using spells that could truly counter alchemical artifacts and defeat this abominable metal hunk. Half an hour later. Why, even though I've already destroyed this thing, it still managed to reassemble 2 new alchemical artifacts from its shattered body, and deliver a fatal blow while I'm out of cards? No. There must be something wrong with my battle strategy. Let me think about it again. Maybe switching out a few spells would be more effective. An hour later. Tong Chu's hands began to tremble slightly again, and a thin layer of sweat seeped down his back. This time, he not only successfully destroyed the main body of the alchemical artifact, but also preemptively defended against the sudden attack of the 2 reassembled metal monsters. He still had 3 cards left in his hand, a defensive spell, an offensive spell, and a support spell. The red dot above his character's head, representing his health, had only 6 remaining. This meant that without defensive spells, a single attack from the enemy would slay him instantly. Should he risk an attack, or use defensive spells to stall for a round? The dwarf felt a vague sense that his next choice would determine his character's ultimate fate in this game. He was unwilling to accept the loss after so many rounds, desperate to win and vindicate his wisdom and decisiveness as a spellcaster. Just as he hesitated, the upper left corner of the crystal screen flickered, revealing a brand new card. This card, slightly different from the white border he had chosen, had a green border. Brave spellcaster, congratulations. While exploring the first floor of the magic tower, you have unexpectedly obtained a low-level elemental artifact, the Dwarven Mystic Hammer. It can only be used once per round and provides armor penetration and stun. Would you like to keep this card and use it to defeat powerful enemies? Copperhammer's eyes widened with ecstasy. Such an unexpected reward? This perfectly compensated for the lack of offensive power in my own cards. It seemed fate had blessed me, and I was sure to win this game. He decisively clicked on the card and pocketed it. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116 Anti-Addiction System. For Holden watched the crystal screen as the stone monster that had tormented him for 3 solid hours finally shattered after he had exhausted all his might by playing his final attack spell card. Haha. Damn stone monster. Now you know the power of Grandpa's fireball, he sat at his desk, arms raised high in the air, and cheered, his exhilarated shouts echoing throughout the study. Teacher, a mage apprentice, usually a favorite of his, pushed the study door open a crack and peeked in. What happened? None of your business. Get out. Fur's expression quickly shifted from excitement to humiliation and anger, and he quickly dismissed his favorite student. He breathed a sigh of relief, returning his gaze to the scene on the crystal screen of the magic brain instrument. A sudden wave of emotion washed over him. This excitement and fun was like the strategy game called King's Chess he'd often played with his tutor as a child. It required both skill and luck. Every floor of this illusory magic tower held unknown dangers and monsters, as well as randomly appearing spells and artifact cards. This gave him many unexpected chances to turn the tables just when he was on the verge of defeat. This game is even more fun than chasing down the fleeing demons and throwing fireballs in the Evil Moon Mountains, although he could only rely on the forum-provided, one-ring tricks he normally disdained. Wasn't this precisely where a spellcaster's wisdom and strategy were tested? A spellcaster's true strength lies in their brains, not in high-level spells. Still brimming with excitement over his successful monster defeat, Fair couldn't help but scroll back and forth through his adventure game results screen. The reward for clearing the second floor is a choice of 3 spell cards. I'll have to think carefully before making my choice. Just then, the clock on the study wall struck midnight. A golden-framed message board popped up on the Magic Tower's game interface. Today's Magic Tower Challenge rankings. First place, Kilthuzid, cleared floors 5. Second place, Scorching Lord, cleared floors 3. 10th place, Son of Flame, cleared floors 2. Fell reached the very end of the leaderboard before he could find his forum handle. Counting ahead, a host of others, like him, had struggled to reach the second floor, but because their battles were shorter, they had easily jumped ahead of Fell's name. Shit. Why am I so last? He slunk back in his chair in frustration, secretly berating himself for his slow grasp of this adventure game. But it doesn't matter. I've always been good at striking back. Once I get more familiar with it, but how is this Mr. Kilthuzid so formidable? He reached the 5th floor in just a few hours. Does he have some secret to clearing the level? Fell decided to contact him privately tomorrow morning, even if it meant paying a price, to obtain the adventure secrets as soon as possible. He took a sip of water, then, with renewed energy, rushed to the magic brain instrument, ready to begin the adventure battle on the 3rd floor. Friendly reminder, the Magic Tower is currently in the forum testing phase, open only from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. daily. It hasn't officially been released on the forum yet, Fair thought, and it made sense. After all, he was lucky enough to have been granted access to the test, the first to experience this fun and thrilling virtual adventure game. Because so few people participated in the test, he'd only managed to place in the top 10. If the official release brought a flood of forum members, wouldn't he? The thought instantly perked him up. He couldn't let anyone else fall behind, especially that frost giant. If he were to get lucky enough to make the leaderboard and even surpass him, who knew what kind of taunting words he'd spew? It's okay if I can't play. I'll copy down all these classes and cards, and then find a few members who participated in the test and have good relationships with me to discuss and study together. Early that morning, Harvey was urged out of his warm bed by the beeping of a message from his magic brain in his study. This was a notification device he had set up specifically to keep tabs on the public opinion on the Spellcaster forum. It had gradually become a magical alarm clock he wanted to smash every day. He logged into the forum and found that he had been pre-selected into a private chat channel with only 3 or 4 members. How arrogant. For every hour of use in the private chat channel, you have to pay 1 point to the forum. It's like paying for a small Friday chat meeting. Son of Fire, has MR at Kilthuzid arrived yet? God, I've asked 3 times. Man in the mirror, I saw his code light up. He must have arrived. Everyone, please be patient. Harvey was baffled. What were these big guys up to today? They were sneaking around in a small group to find him. Kilthuzid, sorry, I barely slept last night, and I just saw your messages now. Son of Fire, haha. I know why you stayed up last night. Were you up all night, like us, researching how to beat the Tower of Magic? Harvey suddenly remembered that he had just completed the original framework for the tower climbing game yesterday and had casually uploaded it to the forum, having the system automatically select a group of initial members to participate in bug testing. He had only played briefly himself, but, overly familiar with the game mechanics and card data, he lost interest and logged off on the 5th floor, heading back to the lab to deal with other matters. Thinking of this, Harvey immediately opened the game interface and found the 9 testers' code names neatly arranged on the leaderboard, with his own name at the top. Okay, I know why they're looking for me so urgently. This group of middle-aged and elderly internet addicts are trying to get speedrun strategies from me. Magic Shield, @Kilthuzid, let me get this straight to the point. How did you defeat those perverted monsters so quickly and reach the 5th floor in just a few hours? Man in the mirror, this is also knowledge sharing. Mr. Kilthuzid, you can make your requests, and we'll satisfy them together. Kilthuzid, everyone, I don't think this is knowledge worth keeping secret or profiting from. The Tower of Magic is just a virtual adventure game launched on the forum. Everyone participates just to pass the time and relieve the fatigue and boredom brought on by academic research. Son of Fire, what makes you think so? This is clearly more than just a game. Games like King's Chess and Circle Dog Fighting, which are the kind of things that ordinary people get addicted to, are actually games. The Tower of Magic is a test of the caster's wisdom and decision-making, but it's just packaged as a game. Harvey covered his face speechlessly. You're really overthinking it. I just wanted to make a game to kill time, and use the random card draw method to pay out your hard-earned forum points. It seems like an anti-addiction system is really necessary when the game officially launches. We can't indulge these middle-aged and elderly internet addicts who haven't seen much of the world. Chapter 117, Krypton Gold Card Draw. Besides the skill required, the true joy of Magic Tower lies in luck and choice. It's inherently filled with randomness and change. The Quinn brothers pointed to the crystal screen of their Magic Brain devices and boasted to Magic Shield friend McCollin with a smug look on their faces. After the official version of Magic Tower went online, we spent an all-nighter rushing from the bottom to the 6th floor. How is that? Alchemists' understanding and application of spell cards are no worse than you orthodox spellcasters, right? Franz certainly didn't want to dwell on this issue with the two brothers. He had come to discuss the significance of 2 new features in the official version of Magic Tower with the Quinn brothers. This incredibly complex card game, when officially launched and fully open to the forums, was far more complex than the beta version had revealed. In addition to the arcane, elemental, bloodline, nature, death, and fate classes, the construction class representing the alchemist was added, ultimately forming 7 extraordinary class factions that mirrored reality. Furthermore, the official version features a new feature called the card editor, allowing players to freely and flexibly select and assemble their own decks. This feature has been extremely well received by forum members, as everyone complained during the beta. The decks available consisted solely of the lowest level first level spells from each class, with only occasional second level spells or low level artifacts randomly triggered during tower battles. This was incredibly weak. High level spellcasters simply didn't want to choose these cards. The card editor also emphasizes a key feature, your own deck. This means that spellcasters participating in the game may receive uniquely powerful spell cards or artifacts through battle or rewards, satisfying the collecting quirks common among many spellcasters. The 3 returned their attention to the crystal screen of the Magic Brain instrument, which now displayed the spell card editing interface for Magic Tower. Purchase the Magic Tower spell card expansion pack for a chance to receive white first ring spell cards, green second ring spell cards, blue third ring spell cards, as well as purple fourth ring spell cards and low and mid-level artifacts. Fran McCollin pointed to the card purchase instructions on the screen and looked at the Quinn brothers. The spells in these card expansion packs are random, but there's a chance of revealing high-level 4th ring spells and powerful artifacts. Magic Tower currently only offers levels up to the 30th floor, and only releases spell cards up to the 5th ring. Besides a free white-based deck for each member account upon joining the game, more powerful spell cards require continuous climbing of the tower, obtaining them from battle rewards, or purchasing spell card packs. Unlocking rare cards requires a certain amount of luck, which can sometimes be increased through accumulated gold. In other words, the true joy and excitement of this game lies in the pay-to-win card draws. 1 point for a pack of spell cards, I could keep opening them forever, Offord muttered. He and Ed had accumulated nearly 400 points in the forums, leaving them with nothing to spend. Harvey had been working at his desk for over 8 hours straight. Aside from spending time in the lab working on some research project, he'd never been this diligent. "Sir, you've been drawing these complicated-looking patterns and lines in your study these past few days. What's the point?" Every time Reiner returned to the castle to report on his work, he couldn't help but scrutinize Harvey's strange behavior. Harvey dropped his quill, smeared with the magical solution, and, with a smile, pointed at the stack of enchanted parchments on his desk. "You don't understand. These are all from a revenue-generating project I'm planning to launch on the Spellcaster Forum." Confused, Reiner picked up a parchment and discovered a drawing of a wooden staff entwined with a flaming serpent. "Is this a spellcaster's battle weapon?" Other parchments scattered across the table bore designs of various magical weapons and exaggerated renderings of low-level spells. "These are called card skins. Once I've finished them all, you can give them a try. The game of Magic Tower doesn't require the constant hustle and bustle of running back and forth between the castle and the city government. It takes away a lot of the fun of life." The alchemical being, trapped within a metal shell, had already completely lost a significant portion of their human senses. Besides sight and hearing, the pleasure-reflecting senses of taste, touch, and smell were completely gone. But Harvey stumbled upon a discovery: even with these low-intelligence wolf spiders, they still retain some of their primitive wild animal habits. When not being driven by commands, they would happily roam in groups outside their territory walls, hunting nearby small animals and even engaging in playful play. This reinforced Harvey's belief that the alchemical life forms were unique artificial intelligent creatures, not simply cold, omnic machines. He painstakingly created the game Tower of Magic, not only to apply his research on living code to the forums, but also to create additional sensory pleasures for alchemical life forms like Reiner and Isdalen. Past experience had shown that exchanging thousands of dollars for a pile of imaginary code data was, in the eyes of many avid gamers, a truly worthwhile investment. This was the greatest allure, and yet also the most terrifying, aspect of video games. Countless people were willing to pay for a few bits of code to create virtual data, and they never tire of it. "Servant, bring me 2 more ale. Quick!" The dwarf, Copper Hammer, slammed his empty goblet onto the table, his face flushed as he shouted to the servant standing by outside the study. He wasn't usually a heavy drinker, nor did he ever get angry at his servants for no reason after drinking. "How can my luck be so bad?" "Impossible. Absolutely impossible." Copper Hammer was sitting in front of the magic brain, operating the instrument to open the Magic Tower expansion pack of spell cards. One more pack, I'm sure I'll get something good." He crossed his legs comically in the reclining chair, clasped his hands together, and muttered to himself, "Father, grandfather, great-grandfather, please bless me like you did for the crypt dungeon. Can you please let me get a purple spell card?" He then clicked the purchase button for the expansion pack again, paid 1 point, and the pack instantly opened, revealing 5 cards that flew out, neatly arranged on the crystal screen. 4 white first ring spells, 1 green second ring spell. Why? These useless spells again. Chapter 118 Work Inspection. Harvey tossed a letter from the spell messenger into the waste paper pile, folded up his own reply, and snapped his fingers to summon a new messenger, watching it flutter out the castle's second-floor window. This was the 3rd time he had written back to reject the Dragonstone Merchants Guild Vice President George Santez's request to visit the frontier territory. Given his secretive nature, it's no wonder Lord Fagin of Grizzly Castle would try to take the blame. Any outsider with inside information would likely suspect Harvey's departure from the southern border to explore the northern frontiers was a cover-up for some unspeakable evil. Lord Fagin, now threatened by the magic sniper he had sent, was soon under investigation by the Royal City Nobles Council and the Union. While Harvey was once again the victim, it seemed his presence had been completely ignored. The royal nobility and magical politicians were interested in the conflicting interests and armed clashes between nobles and spellcasters involved in this incident. Through constant wrangling, they could potentially reap significant benefits for their own faction. As for the real victim, well, he wasn't from a prominent wizarding family, nor was he the favored disciple of a high-ranking member of the Union. A casual letter of consolation would suffice. Since this wasn't the first time Harvey had been attacked innocently, the letter of consolation included a small, neatly stacked box of mid-level magic stones, the most conciliatory gesture the Union had offered the necromancer in years. "Guards, inform Mr. Arsterlin that I'm going to inspect the municipal government. Up, don't notify them ahead of time, we'll just go there." The young soldier, who diligently stood at the study doorway, acting as a marble statue, was startled. This was the first time he had received orders to defend the Lord during his official outing. Normally, the Lord rarely ventured out of the house, mostly ordering his alchemical beast servants to make him tea or water, or fetch some pastries from the kitchen for a late-night snack. The soldier, his feet together, raised his fists to his chest, and with a slight blush on his face, he turned and left the study, heading downstairs to inform Chief Advisor Mr. Asdalin, who was busy in the laboratory. When Harvey finally stepped out of the castle's main gate, he was startled by the guards waiting there. 12 tall and muscular guards, wielding magic spears, expertly surrounded him. The strong men, each about 1.8 meters tall, formed a wall of men, making it difficult for Harvey, who was slightly shorter, to even see the road ahead. 2 massive bear-shaped alchemical beasts followed a group, puffing out thick white steam as they followed the soldiers' orders with heavy steps. Through the gaps in the crowd, Harvey could just barely make out 2 soldiers, armed with rifles, leading the way not far ahead, shouting at anyone who came too close. "When the Lord is out, civilians, get out of the way. Do not attempt to approach, violators will be arrested on the spot." Harvey closed his eyes speechlessly, not enjoying the treatment he received as a local tyrant, but he also understood the soldiers' overreactions and actions, responsible for his personal safety. After all, the incident of someone infiltrating the territory and nearly being shot dead had left a psychological scar on many loyalists. Develop and manufacture the alchemy carriage as soon as possible, and we can avoid such embarrassing situations again. It didn't matter if the carriage wasn't bulletproof, Harvey himself would be bulletproof. The group arrived at the municipal center next to the market district, and as expected, they found a long line of people lining the 2-story entrance, eagerly awaiting the Lord's arrival. Harvey's plans for either an incognito visit or a surprise inspection were now thwarted. This was his first time at a municipal center. When this core institution responsible for the territory's daily administration was first established, Harvey enthusiastically hand-drew the blueprints for the 2-story concrete structure. Reiner had gone to the mining area southwest of the territory to handle work today. The bustling municipal center was occupied only by 2 deputies who had worked alongside him for years, cautiously handling the reception for the Lord's visit. Harvey felt a vague familiarity between the 2 men and, after inquiring, discovered they were among the first refugees rescued and brought back to the territory by Pierce. Compared to the vast influx of impoverished people who subsequently joined the territory, Reiner clearly trusted and valued these veteran refugees who had joined the territory from the very beginning. Their clean backgrounds, unconnected to the southern nobility, meant that Lord Harvey, Reiner, Pierce, and the others had all saved the lives of these 20 or so people, not to mention the subsequent free medical care, food, and shelter they had received. This was enough to instill in them a lasting sense of gratitude and loyalty. Therefore, with Harvey's tacit approval, Reiner assigned them all to key administrative and production institutions within the territory, becoming the first group of powerful officials. The 2 who had hosted Harvey were relatively high achievers in the nighttime literacy school that Asdalin had consistently attended, so Reiner simply assigned them to follow him and handle some important administrative matters. "My lord, we've set up a civic affairs reception desk in the first-floor lobby, handling all daily administrative work within the territory," the middle-aged official named Orange Peel explained clearly to Harvey. "This working group is specifically responsible for sheltering refugees and verifying their identities. This working group is responsible for managing the convenience market, and this one is responsible for all factory production projects within the territory." As Harvey listened to the report, he casually asked, "Where are the departments responsible for free education and healthcare?" A younger official, who had been a bit more reserved, immediately chimed in, "My lord, they're all upstairs. The medical and education teams prefer a quieter work environment, and they rarely spend their days at the municipal office, spending most of their time at the school or the hospital." Harvey nodded, expressing his satisfaction with this new work arrangement. After all, he'd only casually mentioned a few ideas, but he hadn't expected Asdalin and Reiner to manage them so seamlessly. It was undeniable that the alchemical life forms, in their absolute rational mode, were the perfect people to handle government affairs and support administrative tasks. "Has your commander, General Reiner, ever mentioned my recent orders?" Harvey stopped and stood in the middle of the hall, still surrounded by soldiers. Orange Peel, with some difficulty, squeezed his head between the bodies of two sturdy soldiers, and replied with a smile on his face, "My lord, General Reiner announced to us 3 days ago that a separate inspection department would be established to investigate all illegal and disorderly incidents within the territory." The younger officials also followed suit, dazedly squeezing their heads into the crowd and adding calmly, "My lord, the new inspection department's office space has been assigned to the Ministry of Construction for site selection. Now the only thing left is the name of the department." "What do you think?" Harvey raised his hand awkwardly to separate the soldiers who surrounded him. "I've already decided. The new department will be called the Police Department." Chapter 119 Magic Stone Steam Engine. Jackdaw Town was still shrouded in a thin mist in the early morning, the chill air brought on by the impending melting of the winter snow making the town seem particularly deserted. A caravan of carriages slowly emerged from the town, heading towards the nearest hunter village at the foot of Jackdaw Ridge. The caravan leader, seated in a four-wheeled carriage, spotted from afar several people standing on tiptoe at the village entrance, waving at them. "President George Santos. I didn't expect you to arrive so early," the middle-aged man in the lead greeted with a smile. The chubby-cheeked, slightly bloated vice president of the Dragonstone Merchant Guild shook his head and said with a wry smile, "Master Harvey, no, Lord Harvey declined my request to travel to the frontier territory, but then contacted me to meet you at the warehouse." The trading environment back then wasn't as safe and convenient as it would be in later times. Most caravans, with their weak defenses, dared not easily cross the borders of their respective nations and travel far and wide. There are not many large chambers of commerce as famous as the Dragonstone Chamber of Commerce in the southern continent. The main reason is that they have their own bloodline warrior bodyguard group and have close relations with the nobles and federations of various countries. The middle-aged man's smile remained unchanged as he invited Santos to go into the warehouse for a short rest. At the same time, he whispered mysteriously, "Lord Harvey invited you here because he has something good to share with you. After all, you are the real expert in doing business and making money." Santos took a sip of warm beer and said reservedly, "There is no need to say much about the relationship between Lord Harvey and our Chamber of Commerce. However, if it is a business like the soap business last time, I think it is more appropriate to negotiate face-to-face. After all, the profit is huge, and the contract needs to be repeatedly discussed and signed." The middle-aged man chuckled and said, "The wasteland is bitterly cold, and you know that Lord Harvey is a delicate spellcaster. Recently, he has been overworked and unfortunately caught a cold, so he sent me as a representative." He turned and nodded slightly to the young clerk in the warehouse. The other party immediately brought a wooden box and placed it on the table in front of them. After the man opened it, he revealed 2 magic stones with photos inside. "Magic stone? What does that mean? Lord Harvey bought magic stones from me a while ago, so why is he trying to sell them back to me now?" Santos asked, frowning slightly. The magic stone business involves violating the Federation's monopoly interests, so they generally don't get involved unless the purchase price is high and the quantity is small, as Harvey did. After all, every large chamber of commerce has special smuggling channels behind the scenes. "No, if it were just magic stones, you wouldn't bother making this trip." The middle-aged man gently picked up one of the pieces and showed Santos the video recording it contained. "Please look." It was a metal box-like object placed on the ground, pitch black and seemingly composed of multiple mechanical parts. A man who looked like a technician stood beside it, expertly pulling a long lever on the box. The large, heavy metal box immediately emitted a rumbling sound, and a thick white steam belched from its top. Then, a huge wheel mounted on its surface began to slowly rotate. The oil-soaked belt attached to it spun rapidly, pulling a massive mining cart half a man's height nearby, approaching the machine at breakneck speed. Is this an alchemical artifact? The Exploration Society's latest invention?" The knowledgeable vice president of the Dragonstone Chamber of Commerce stared at the footage with wide eyes, slightly surprised. He then said with a hint of sarcasm, "Lord Harvey isn't thinking of using this thing to replace manual labor in the mines, is he? Our Chamber of Commerce has several successful mines in Orland, but how much does it cost to hire a single miner?" He pointed at the metal machine on the screen. "Purchasing just one of the Exploration Society's alchemical artifacts would probably be enough to pay hundreds of miners' salaries for several years. Cost-wise, it's simply not feasible." The middle-aged man didn't immediately argue. Still grinning, he refilled his glass with warm beer before slowly asking, "President Santos, I wonder how much a similar alchemical artifact from the Exploration Society would cost. Santos pondered for a moment, then said cautiously, a conservative estimate would be at least 500 gold pounds, and there are the subsequent repairs and maintenance, among other hassles. Besides, money alone isn't enough to buy a machine that can replace the tireless work of human labor, he whispered with a hint of disgust. Lord Harvey knows that the Exploration Society is a group of alchemists who rely on connections to get things done. The middle-aged man didn't respond. Instead, he picked up another image retaining magic stone and displayed the image to Santos. This time, Santos finally saw Harvey in person. President Santos. How are you? In the image, Harvey, with the dark circles under his eyes that befitted his spellcasting status, smiled broadly as he sat in a study-like room. I'm sorry I can't invite you to my territory. You've been traveling frequently between Grizzly Castle and Danius lately, so I'm afraid you've heard that I suffered an armed attack some time ago from what was suspected to be neighboring nobles. You should have seen the mechanical creation I wanted to show you, right? What do you think? A powerful machine that can replace human labor and work all day without sleep. Do you think it has commercial prospects? Santos curled his lips imperceptibly and muttered to himself, it's indeed technically comparable to the mechanical creations produced by the Exploration Society, but the cost is probably not as good as directly hiring miners. Harvey in the video screen continued with a smile, I believe you must be considering the cost and subsequent maintenance issues, right? As far as I know, similar alchemical creations of the Exploration Society will probably cost no less than 300 gold pounds, and they probably won't be able to mass produce them. Then, if I tell you sincerely that the price of the machine I made is only 1/5 of the one produced by the Exploration Association, and there is no need to worry about subsequent repairs and maintenance, will you choose to buy it? Will the owners of those large mines in the southern border think it is good value for money? Santos opened his eyes wide and stood up from his chair abruptly. What, 100 gold pounds per unit? An alchemical artifact that can replace manpower and complete transportation work can be purchased so cheaply. He tilted his head in disbelief and looked at the middle-aged man in charge of the warehouse. Lord Harvey, you are not kidding me, right? The other party seemed to have expected his expression and attitude. President Santos, the Lord has always had a pleasant cooperation with you. When has he had the leisure to entertain you? This kind of alchemical machine is not simple to manufacture. The cast iron and various parts required are also quite labor-intensive to manufacture. The price of 120 gold pounds is actually a special price given only to you, a high-quality partner. It's very simple to operate, and the power source is quite cheap. A single low-level magic stone can keep it running for over 12 hours. You can calculate how much operating costs the mine could save by replacing manual labor. The middle-aged man paused, taking a leisurely sip of beer under Santos's anxious expression, before continuing his introduction. Furthermore, this machine has applications beyond mines. It can also replace windmills and water wheels, grind wheat flour in mills, and handle the lifting and hauling of all kinds of large cargo in those large warehouses of your Chamber of Commerce. Santos, already feeling a little impatient, interrupted the other man's unending speech. How many of these machines has Lord Harvey produced so far? I want to buy them all. Chapter 120 The Prototype of Industrialization. After some bargaining through a spell coach, Harvey secured his first order for a magic stone steam engine, again from his old partner, the Dragonstone Chamber of Commerce. The transaction value was relatively modest compared to the leaks he'd profited from on the Spellcaster Forum. Each magic stone steam engine cost 150 gold pounds, including the machine itself, a complete set of replacement parts, and specialized operating training. However, the newly established machinery factory had limited production capacity. Limited by the workers' skill level and the amount of cast iron available, it could only assemble a maximum of 5 qualified finished machines per month. The Dragonstone Chamber of Commerce's ambitious order for 20 units would have to be delivered in batches over 4 months. Still, Harvey was very satisfied with the deal. The order valued the entire territory at 3,000 gold pounds, and all the materials used were produced within the territory. Iron ore from the southwest mining area was transported back to the territory's ironworks, smelted into ingots, then transferred to the iron foundry for the various components to be cast. Finally, the entire process was assembled at the machinery factory. This constituted a highly integrated industrialized production chain. Excluding labor and raw material costs, the net profit could reach nearly 50%, netting Harvey a profit of 1,500 gold pounds. Furthermore, subsequent equipment maintenance, parts replacement, and modifications, among other after-sales support, all require the machines to be returned to the frontier territory. This ongoing income will gradually expand as production and sales of the machines increase, providing a large number of jobs and cultivating a highly skilled workforce. The frontier territory originally accepted refugees and slave laborers from the northern wastes. For generations, these people had been homeless or enslaved by the fell orcs, bound to the pastures for livestock. Their offspring faced the same fate, with no hope. Before arriving in the territory, most people lived a dull, day-to-day existence, driven not by a genuine desire but by constant hunger and the whips and blades of the fell orc slave masters. This resulted in extremely low productivity and high labor losses. The southern continent also saw a large number of impoverished people who had lost their land or were driven to flee their homes by high taxes, forcing them into serfdom. Harvey believed that the low productivity of society during this period was likely due to this irrational and cruel system of serfdom, which was the greatest enemy of industrialization and must be abolished within his territory. Therefore, Harvey offered all refugees who joined the frontier territory an opportunity to change their fate. They could work hard to earn an income, accumulate assets for themselves and their descendants, or receive an education, upgrade their occupations from manual labor to skilled work, and ultimately achieve class advancement. Professional soldiers in the regular army and municipal administrators were typical examples of this. They were the first to reap the benefits of this upward mobility, undoubtedly greatly encouraging those who followed suit and quickly integrated into the territory's institutional ecosystem. In addition to the machinery factory, Harvey also planned to build textile mills, steel mills, shipyards, steam carriage shops, and other manufacturing hubs suitable for industrial development. After all, Harvey alone, relying on his limited experience as a time traveler and cobbling together a magical steam engine, could not fully industrialize the territory. Furthermore, he had not been a technician in the relevant field in his previous life and could not even understand mechanical blueprints. Only by attracting enough people to participate in the manufacturing, transportation, and sales of industrialized products can this wave of development truly begin. Once these basic industries are established and well established within the territory, a steady stream of supporting industries will follow. Initially, letting them develop freely may lead to inefficiencies and dismal product quality rates, but they will gradually develop proficiency and cultivate qualified professionals. With the right people, Harvey is confident that he can not only achieve internal circulation of various goods and materials within the territory, but also manage revenue-generating import and export businesses, expanding his business empire throughout the southern kingdoms. Sir, the office space for the police department, the inspection department you requested, has been completed. The construction department completed the internal details yesterday, and the subsequent recruitment process is underway. Reiner, holding a work record book, reported incessantly from behind Harvey. How is the recruitment going? Aren't there enough people applying? I remember the pay was on par with farms and factories. For a long time, all security and crime detection duties within the territory were handled directly by the defense patrols. But this wasn't a long-term solution, especially with the territory's walls nearing completion. These soldiers, originally tasked with defending the territory, would now be tasked with maintaining the walls and maintaining daily security around the territory. The military's armed forces shouldn't directly interfere with the territory's internal oversight. Soldiers' magic guns must always be used consistently and unwaveringly, never aiming their guns at their fellow citizens. Therefore, a semi-military organization independent of the military, along with the resulting territory laws, became necessary. The formulation, interpretation, and adjustment of laws were, of course, best left to Harvey, the supreme ruler of the territory. However, a streamlined and effective inspection agency was the fundamental guarantee for the smooth implementation of these laws. The police department is a department that is used to supervise the municipal center and identify and arrest all individuals or groups that may endanger the stability of the territory. This department needs to be directly responsible to me and is completely independent of the military and municipal departments. Harvey turned his head and instructed Reiner, so when it comes to recruiting, you must keep a tight rein on it. Only choose refugees from the north with clean identities and simple backgrounds. Don't let anyone from the south infiltrate to avoid accidents. Reiner nodded and honestly wrote down what Harvey said. Sir, what I was trying to discuss earlier was the recruitment issue. The Defense Force and the Northern Army have just undergone a recruitment expansion, and young people who meet the requirements are more interested in joining the army than joining up the police department. After all, an ordinary soldier earns 120 gold yuan a month, with room and board provided in the barracks. Reiner paused, his tone somewhat complicated. Even factory workers earn 100 gold yuan a month. If the police department's recruitment salary is the same as that of workers, then those young people who meet the requirements will prefer factory work. After all, they can learn a useful skill. Harvey slapped his forehead, remembering that the salary he had casually quoted for various jobs had seemed a bit arbitrary and unreasonable because it was related to the issuance of printed paper money. For basic production sectors like farms, factories, and mines, the natural approach was to encourage enthusiastic participation in the workforce by offering a steady base salary with variable overtime pay. Institutions like the military, municipal administration, and the police should maintain higher salaries, ensuring both high salaries and clean governance while also ensuring clear promotion pathways. Otherwise, they'll gradually breed a wave of corrupt officials who simply sit in their positions and do nothing, negatively impacting the territory's future development. Reiner, get me a pen and paper. I need to restructure the salary system for all positions within the territory. Reiner was startled, then asked, stunned, Sir, are you cutting salaries? Harvey laughed and said, Of course not. Restructuring means raising salaries across the board. Encouraging everyone to work harder. Naturally, the increases will vary for different positions. Chapter 121, Pioneer Territory Police Department. Harvey had long planned a broad security and defense system for the pioneering territory. However, the territory's rapid population growth forced him to focus entirely on food production and resource cultivation, slowing progress in these areas. After midwinter, the territory's population reached approximately 10,000. Besides refugees from the northern wastelands, there were also numerous serfs from the southern kingdoms. These had originally ventured across the Divine Spine Mountains, hoping to eke out a hardy living in the north, only to be driven southward by the vast hordes of fellow orcs, leaving them stranded. Fortunately, Harvey had prearranged a number of highly mobile alchemy beasts, working alongside small groups of soldiers to gather these impoverished people. Furthermore, the influx of ethnic minorities, such as orcs and hybrid dwarves, further complicated the territory's demographics, leading to significant disparities in the quality of the population and frequent civil disputes and violent clashes. Harvey also felt that even with the defense forces handling these disputes, he wouldn't have the free time to act as a judge. Most of the time, he'd just be fair and just give a lash and let it go. It was time to implement a comprehensive public security system. After all, he held the territory's independent legislative power, and the accompanying internal violence agencies needed to keep pace. The Lord would personally dictate laws, interpret and adjust regulations, and adjudicate major crimes, such as treason and collusion with foreign enemies. The police department would arrest and interrogate criminals according to the law, handle civil disputes, and oversee the integrity of other administrative systems. This could effectively slow the spread of corruption among powerful groups within the territory. However, simply slowing and preventing corruption was impossible, completely eradicating it was impossible, Harvey believed, in any era. At that point, the territory would uniformly implement its own laws, subject to strict control by all administrative departments. The only person who could hold the charter above the law would be the Supreme Lord himself. As for the current head of the police department, Harvey planned to investigate the military and municipal systems for suitable candidates. For now, however, Asdalon would have to assume the role concurrently. After all, the alchemical life form's absolute rationality made them well suited for the cold-blooded work of a lord's lackey. Max Anton limped back to his rented house, and his elderly mother, Jenna, who was guarding the door, immediately came to greet him. Max, it took you so long to get back. Your leg isn't healed yet. Can you rest at home? Max lowered his head slightly, grinning softly, and whispered, It's nothing. I just had a little accident on my way back from the market. He tilted his neck, showing his mother, who was watching him intently, the wound behind his ear, which had stopped bleeding but still looked a bit hideous. Hiss. How did you get a head injury? Did you get in a fight? Jenna quickly untied a clean cotton cloth from her waist and gently wiped the remaining blood from Max's neck. I got hit with a stick, but I dodged it. It was just a scrape. He waved his hand nonchalantly, flopping down on a chair in front of the fireplace. Those Southerners are ganging up on Aunt Eureka and her family in the Market District again. I just can't stand it. Aunt Eureka was their next-door neighbor, once a poor refugee from the wasteland. The only special thing about her was that she had adopted 2 orc orphans. Both cubs were minors, and Aunt Eureka relied on the money she earned from picking mushrooms in the swamp and selling them at the market to support them. Besides the strict military prohibitions, most people in the territory harbored a subtle discrimination against orcs. Although the Lord's laws stipulated that everyone should be treated equally in education, work, and salary, this wasn't always the case in real life. Then the defense patrol arrived and whipped us all. Max straightened up and opened his shirt. I was lucky. I only got away with 1 blow, Jenna gasped, looking at the hideous bloodstain on her son's back. This is much worse than the wound on your head. I'll get you some ashes. Max waved her hand away. Mom. Don't do it. Those folk remedies will give me an infection. A doctor I was shopping at the market kindly told me to keep the wound dry and well ventilated. It should heal in a week at most. If he did get infected, even though the hospital's treatment and medication were cheap, it wouldn't be affordable for a family as poor as theirs. After all, Jenna worked part-time on the farm without a fixed contract, earning only 60 gold yuan a month, which was enough to cover the food and rent for 2 people. Max himself was unemployed, without even a temporary job to make ends meet. He sat in the chair with his head down, his eyes looking at his bent and deformed leg, and his right hand that trembled and twitched from time to time. When he was a child, he had the misfortune of suffering from a high fever. Although he survived thanks to the strong physique of the wasteland people, the sequelae was this terrible disability that accompanied him for the rest of his life. Jenna squatted beside the iron pot on the fireplace to serve him hot soup, and suddenly sighed softly. You shouldn't always stand up for others. You must learn to be patient when encountering things in the future, otherwise I'm worried. Max coughed and interrupted his mother's nagging. I can't be patient at all, Mom. You know my character, and you should know what kind of people those people in the South are. He rolled up his trouser legs and put his feet close to the fireplace to warm them. Besides, I'm not a brainless guy. I deliberately picked the time to fight with them today. You, deliberately causing trouble. Jenna was stunned with a bowl in her hand. Every afternoon at this time, a patrol of the defense forces enters the market area on patrol duty. Max chuckled. I deliberately let them see a group of Southerners, relying on their numbers, bullying an old woman and 2 half-orc orphans whose hair hasn't even grown out yet. Max blinked at his mother, who looked solemn, and whispered, I heard that among the highest commanders of the Northern Army is an orc officer. He's quite powerful. If these things get out of hand, he might stand up for his own people. Jenna shoved the bowl of soup into Max's hands with a complaint. Ever since you were a child, you've been smarter than other children, and you've always been quicker to react to things than others. She turned her eyes and caught sight of her son's deformed leg, and then fell silent with a complicated expression. Bang, bang, bang. Someone suddenly knocked on the wooden door of their cabin. Max stood up and ran over to open the door. Is this Max Anton's home? The person who came was a man in a black soldier uniform, carrying a long gun and looking energetic. I'm Max, sir. Max thought to himself that he was in trouble. Did the fight in the afternoon really get to the attention of the officials, and now the trouble came directly to his door? But the black-clad soldier did not put a lasso on him directly, nor did he point the magic gun behind his back at his head and ask him to kneel down and not move. Instead, he took out a thin piece of paper from his arms and briefly checked with Max and Jenna the identity information they had entered when they joined the territory. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, please report to the police station next to the municipal center on time. Don't be late, the soldier said coldly, turned around and was about to leave. Max hurriedly called him. Sir? Am I in trouble? The soldier answered loudly without turning his head. No, someone recommended you to the police station for an interview. You have the opportunity to become a trainee police officer. Chapter 122 Seed of Magic. It had been about a week since snow fell in the Divine Spine Mountains, where the Pioneer Territory was located. This signaled the end of the bitter cold of winter and the arrival of spring, full of hope. The days of melting snow were actually much colder than usual. Shivering in the biting cold, Harvey attended the completion ceremony of the Pioneer Territory's city wall and announced a pre-announced salary increase for the new year before the thousands of citizens who had worked on this massive project. A thunderous cheer echoed throughout the city walls. After a winter of hard work, the citizens were filled with heartfelt gratitude and joy. This jubilant heat washed over Harvey as he stood on the wall, warming his previously slightly chilled body. Although the outposts on the city walls offer shelter, they're still too cold. Even with fireplaces, soldiers staying inside for extended periods of time are still susceptible to catching cold and falling ill. Harvey sniffed as he descended the ramparts, instructing Reiner beside him, "Bring the HVAC system up to the walls. At worst, we can just build a few more hot water boilers near the base of the walls. Don't worry about the cost. The northern wilderness, with its endless primeval forests and drastically different temperatures, is not ideal for human habitation and reproduction. This deficiency can only be addressed through continuous technological development and planning and construction. Fortunately, the land, uncultivated for millennia, is exceptionally fertile and rich in various products. In just 1 year, within this territory, which Harvey had secretly expanded several times over, not only were numerous rich mineral veins discovered, but also numerous wild magical plants, extremely rare in the southern kingdoms. Even the glacial rivers, frozen for 3 or 4 months of the year, were abundantly productive. Fishermen manning the riverbanks and docks often set out in the early morning and evening, returning with a full haul of plump fish to the local market. On the way back to the castle, passing the city center, Harvey saw many of the subjects who had previously participated in the construction of the city wall gathered at the gate, eagerly queuing to apply for jobs in the newly opened factories. Reiner's previous concern, that thousands of subjects would be unemployed after the completion of the city wall, had been perfectly resolved. Labor-intensive industries like textile mills and steel works could absorb nearly half of these people into the workforce. After Egno finishes his work at the infirmary, remember to ask him when the production of enchanted cotton seeds can be increased. Spring is almost here, and the land allocated for cotton cultivation has been plowed. Right. Leonard quickly pulled out his notebook and flipped through it. Mr. Egno should be able to complete the enchantment of the first batch of cotton seeds this week, which won't delay the spring planting schedule. The textile mill was established before the cotton fields, resulting in Harvey having to import most of the raw materials from abroad with his own money. The territory government, which had finally achieved a balanced budget, is now in a state of financial hardship. Only after the spring plowing season, and the autumn harvest of the enchanted cotton, whose yield has doubled, can they offset the loss of raw materials. The bitter cold of the north makes it unrealistic to rely solely on imported fabrics or animal hides harvested by hunting teams to provide clothing freedom for the territory's population of over 10,000. Sir, that inner demon has sent us a few more living demon spirits via the sacrificial array. Will you convert them directly or keep them for a while? Harvey hesitated, but Reiner immediately added, Mr. Inner demon also asked when we could arrange for him to visit the territory again. Harvey couldn't help but roll his eyes. Wasn't it just over a month since his last eat and take visit? Why was he coming again so hastily? It's easier said than done. Tell him the next visit is tentatively scheduled for the middle of next month. I've been too busy lately to receive him. This wasn't a purely polite refusal. Harvey was genuinely busy. Since completing the morphological analysis of the energy-absorbing beetles and living demon spirits, he had been spending countless hours daily editing and modifying this living source code. Using miniature wolf spiders, he then attached it to the crystal pillars of the underground magic stone veins, creating a code database that could be accessed at any time through programming. No one could do this work for him, so Harvey had to toil day and night, causing his already frail body to develop even darker circles under his eyes. Fortunately, Egno had recently concocted a number of magical potions to boost energy and strengthen his physique. Harvey took them daily, following his doctor's orders, and they had alleviated his discomfort considerably. He'd even sneaked a recipe from a member's transaction on a spellcaster forum, and the efficacy was indeed quite impressive. His latest research topic, also accidentally stumbled upon on the forum, sparked a new inspiration, and he began experimenting, soul-stitching technology. This was a topic repeatedly discussed in private discussions between the man in the mirror and the legendary spellcaster Scorching Lord. It was still in the theoretical stage, and due to the taboos of the Union's regulations, no experiments had yet been added. Harvey couldn't care less. His private estate in the northern wastes was remote, and he could start whenever he wanted. Mr. Scorching Overlord's concept is indeed novel, but this phenomenon actually occurs quite often. Why hasn't anyone paid attention to it before? Harvey muttered to himself as he flipped through his experimental log. Reiner was his assistant for the day, so he had already installed the mechanical octopus prosthesis on his back. This experiment required extremely stable and swift delicate manipulation, and his 6 metal tentacles were the perfect fit. Legendary spellcasters likened the souls of all living things to seeds of varying shapes and properties, and the growth of mental power represented the sprouts and thriving branches within those seeds. This is why many attacks involving the soul often inflict severe mental damage on the caster. However, as long as the soul seed survives, mental power will eventually recover. The soul is regenerative and possesses a certain degree of self-healing ability. This gave Harvey a bold experimental idea. What if he could successfully extract complete soul seeds from a living being and stitch them together using mental power? Does that mean that this bizarre self-healing ability will cause the forcibly stitched soul seeds to slowly fuse together, forming a whole new soul? From the perspective of a spellcaster's professional talent, soul manipulation is indeed the primary research focus of the necromancer faction. However, Harvey's understanding suggests that no necromancer has ever attempted experimental research beyond manipulating living souls. This alien world, home to so many extraordinary beings, is not short of incredible wizards. The forbidden techniques and super ring spells found in various historical texts also prove that every legendary spellcaster who has emerged in the past was a genius skilled in creation and research. Why has no one ever attempted to break through the barriers of soul research? This is what puzzles Harvey the most. Even the ancient Alchemy Exploration Society is still stuck on the most basic soul transfer technology. What has hindered the research of these genius predecessors? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 Soul Transplantation Experiment. It must be said that the magic microscope Harvey had created by coating an enchanted crystal lens with liquid mithril was indeed quite useful. It not only possessed the fine-grained observation capabilities of a regular microscope, but also allowed the clear observation of the flow of magical energy and the transmission pathways of mental power through the lens, making it a truly useful experimental artifact for research-oriented spellcasters. Currently, there were no restrictions or technical confidentiality issues surrounding this device. Harvey decided to publicly promote it on spellcaster forums once it could be mass-produced, benefiting both others and himself. Harvey also designed a head-mounted magic microscope that could be mounted on Reiner's metal skull, allowing him to observe the target's reactions during experiments and report back to him at any time. My lord, this thing is truly amazing. Through it, I can see the magic flowing through your body. It's just like Mr. Egno described, like blood, flowing in an orderly fashion throughout your body along dense veins. Harvey asked with a smile, can you see where the magic in my body ultimately converges? The magic power drawn from the magical network plane through meditation by the caster is gathered in the brain's sea of consciousness, where mental channels exist that connect to and locate the magic patterns. For knights or warriors who have activated their bloodline talents, their bloodline energy converges in the heart. Through special training, they harness this energy for their own benefit. I can't quite see where this magic ultimately converges. Reiner's words were thick with confusion and bewilderment. It seems to have no beginning or end. Oh my god, it's true, it truly has no source and no destination. Harvey felt a wave of inexplicable fear as he listened to Reiner's slightly trembling voice. How could it be possible? My magic flowed with no source and no end? Where did it come from? I clearly draw magic from the magic weave through meditation. Could it be my mutated magic pattern again? Or was it the time traveler's spiritual anchor misleading Reiner's observations? Harvey had grown somewhat numb to these strange phenomena. It was as if he knew something was wrong, but since he couldn't find the root cause and there hadn't been a sudden onset of illness, he could only pretend it was gone for now. Life had to go on, and the experiments had to continue. After about 4 or 5 failed attempts, Harvey and Reiner finally succeeded in extracting the soul seed of a chimpanzee. This primate had been proven to possess relatively powerful souls and mental strength, alongside highly intelligent life forms like humans, demons, and elves. After all, using weak or less intelligent insects or other beasts wouldn't be able to withstand the repeated soul transfer experiments, often disintegrating after just 2 or 3 extractions. Sir, how can a chimpanzee's soul be stitched together with another animal's and then infused into an alchemical body? What form of alchemical beast will be produced? Reiner hesitated several times before finally asking. He had participated in so many soul transfer experiments that, When Harvey was busy, Reiner could even work alone with Dallin to complete batches of alchemical beast transformations. However, those were simple one-way soul transfers, not involving the extraction and stitching of soul seeds, making them far less challenging. I don't know either. This is just a preliminary experiment to verify the hypothesis. We can only take it one step at a time, learning from our failures as much as possible. Harvey continued to operate the soul extractor without looking up, proceeding step by step with the subsequent experimental procedures. After stitching the chimpanzee's soul seed with the soul of an ordinary wild llama, Harvey carefully transferred them into a makeshift alchemical body. To prevent accidents, this alchemical prosthesis consisted only of a torso and head, without any additional limbs. This way, even if the soul-stitched creature suddenly attacked them, it would have no limbs to use. After the soul transfer was complete, the energy inscriptions covering the alchemical prosthesis slowly illuminated, indicating that the alchemical life form's soul had been incorporated into the prosthesis. The comical single eye on the improvised metal head glowed faintly red, and then the head slowly began to rotate, while the torso, firmly fixed to the metal frame, trembled slightly. Since it wasn't made of a human soul, Harvey couldn't communicate directly with it and obtain experimental feedback. He turned and gestured to Reiner to communicate with the alchemical life form through the energy connection and issue instructions. My lord, this is very strange. It's conveying to me its curiosity and desire for these things. Reiner pointed to the various experimental instruments cluttered on the laboratory table. This was indeed the reaction of highly intelligent primates like chimpanzees. They always have a high degree of curiosity about various tools and parts. Harvey had previously accurately concluded this when he transformed a monkey into a working alchemical beast. Equip it with the alchemical camel's limbs and lower it from the stand. I want to see how it reacts, driven by instinct. Harvey and Reiner stood by in silence, watching this alchemical life form transformed from a soul-stitched monster. It circled around the laboratory with unusual gentleness and slowness, occasionally picking up a shiny metallic part or tool, then curiously playing with it for a moment, then diligently collecting these things and placing them on its flat back. How did it become a metal trash man? Sending it to the department in the municipal center responsible for handling residents' garbage is very suitable. It will pick up everything and look at it, and collect anything it likes. Reiner took the experimental record book and quickly recorded the experimental progress and results. At least it's not aggressive. I was worried that after the souls were stitched together, this thing would turn into a chaotic, bloodthirsty, violent monster. Harvey shook his head, dismissing Reiner's suspicion. Chimpanzees and llamas are both gentle animals. If we stitched together a gray wolf and a swamp crocodile, I'm afraid the final product wouldn't be so docile and adorable. But he didn't think the experiment was a ridiculous failure. At least he accurately observed that the final whole formed by the two stitched souls was still dominated by the more powerful soul. The stitched alchemy's instinctive behavior was still guided by the chimpanzee soul, although the final result was a little nonsensical. Reiner, I think the soul stitching experiment could be very useful in certain specific scenarios. Reiner scratched his bald head, feeling a little confused. Specific scenarios? My lord, are you saying, besides creating these useless clown machines, can it have truly practical uses? Harvey smiled slightly, recalling the alchemical device Arcane Master's arms brought out by the man in the mirror at the Spellcaster Forum auction. Of course, for example, reattaching severed limbs, or performing alchemical limb transplants on disabled people. Chapter 124 Regenerative Prosthesis. As Dallin looked at the report Reiner handed over and felt a slight pain in his brow. Is this the list of candidates for the police department to recruit during this period? He read it from beginning to end. Why are there so many disabled people? Well, many of them were injured and disabled and forced to retire while fighting the evil orcs on the front line. Reiner nodded seriously and explained, Lord Harvey told me in advance that we don't need to pay attention to the disabilities of these veterans. As long as they have a clean identity and combat experience, they can all be included in the recruitment reserve list. As Dallin held his forehead, feeling that the prosthetic core in his brain was a little overheated. What is your excellency trying to do? Turn the police department into a retirement home for disabled veterans? The two of them argued endlessly about this question and quickly rushed to the castle laboratory, wanting to personally find Harvey, who issued this order, to reconfirm it again. That's right. I did arrange it that way. What's wrong? Is it because there aren't enough candidates? They don't have to be retired soldiers. Northern refugees with clean identities can also be included as candidates. Harvey chatted casually with his two assistants while operating the experimental equipment. As Dallin asked doubtfully, "Sir, these disabled soldiers can't even pick up their magic guns and fight again. Most of them have upper limb disabilities, and some have broken legs and limbs. How can they possibly be qualified for the police department?" Harvey then removed his experimental protective mask and solemnly explained his plans. "The evil orcs return every year, and the fighting in the frontier territory never stops. Not to mention the southern nobles across the Divine Spine Mountains, who are also eyeing us covetously. Battles are bound to be without casualties. We will do our best to provide for the dead, but what about the injured? Have you considered that as time goes by, this group of people will increase in number? How to rehabilitate them and return them to their normal work roles is actually a very important issue. Physical disabilities often lead to various psychological problems. When these people are numerous, they can easily become an unstable factor that threatens the security of the territory." Harvey couldn't explain to people of this era what post-traumatic stress disorder is, let alone effectively identify and treat these poor people who may be suffering from PTSD. The best approach is to allow them to reintegrate into society and participate in the vast administrative machinery of government, subtly shifting the perspective from "I'm useless" to "I'm still useful to society." "What do you mean?" Reiner had somewhat anticipated Harvey's plans and ideas, but felt they were a bit too shocking to confirm. "The soul stitching and limb transplant experiments a while ago," Harvey stated frankly. "I plan to select a few strong-willed and loyal individuals from this group to conduct prosthetic transplant experiments." Reiner and Asdalen fell silent for a moment. After all, they were the first beneficiaries of Harvey's human experiments, and it was impossible for them to object to his conducting such experiments. Even though it was explicitly prohibited by the Federation's laws and regulations, in the minds of these two alchemical beings, the Federation's bullshit treaty was less important than Harvey's casual orders. Reiner pulled out a list and handed it to Harvey. "Sir, what criteria should I use to select the first group of subjects?" This question was actually puzzling to Harvey himself. After all, he lived a secluded life and was much less familiar with these low-level soldiers and civilians than Pierce, Reiner, and the others. I only have a vague impression of two people on this list. You can put them on the waiting list for now. You can ask Pierce about the rest." Harvey pointed to two candidates on the list he vaguely remembered. "This one, Uriel, met the requirements after interrogation during the last assassination attempt. I think he has an amputated arm, and this one, a smart guy Egno stumbled upon while wandering the market last time. He seems to have a lower limb deformity." Harvey pondered for a moment, then instructed, "Don't pick too many for the first group. After all, there are still some risks associated with this surgery. Let's just pick 3 for now." Uriel was quite confused when his superior, the battalion commander, called him out of the NCO quarters. He had been serving in the defense force for some time, and most of the time, as required, he organized the soldiers at night for group activities and open discussions. Themes often revolved around things like, the territory's army is the people's army. Every soldier comes from a common background, so they should fight for the people, or, comrades should cultivate trust and mutual support, and only when necessary, turn their backs on their colleagues. He also frequently intervened in disputes between small groups, actively mediating and easing any slightly discordant atmosphere within the army. Furthermore, as an apprentice knight, despite having a missing hand, he still looked tall and handsome. Many soldiers admired his eloquence and demeanor, allowing him to quickly integrate into the military community. "Sir, do you have any mission instructions for me?" Uriel asked, puzzled. Due to his disability, he couldn't even use his magic gun, let alone accompany the soldiers in daily training. Most of his work depended on his mouth. The battalion commander shook his head and explained, "It's not a mission order. I've received a command from the commander-in-chief to ask you." His expression was complicated, and after a long moment of deliberation, he finally spoke. "When you met with the Lord before, he personally promised you that if there was a way to restore your severed limb, would you be willing to try?" As soon as the battalion commander's words left his mouth, Uriel felt his heart skip a beat, and it felt as if all the blood rushed to his head. "I do. Of course I do. Sir, I thought, the Lord was just trying to comfort me." His eyes were slightly red with excitement. If my arm can really be restored, then wouldn't I be able to wield the magic spear myself?" The battalion commander's lips curled into a relieved smile. "Don't be too happy. The Lord has instructed me to make it clear to you that this, Limb surgery isn't 100% successful. But even if it fails, it won't cost you your life. That night, Pierce, freshly returned from his shift at the outpost, personally brought 3 subjects to Harvey's laboratory. Sir, all 3 have been brought here. Pierce leaned in close to Harvey and whispered in his ear. I've personally interviewed them all. They volunteered completely and have pledged to maintain confidentiality regarding the experiment and its results. He paused, then added softly, as for their loyalty, rest assured. You could say they're fanatically devoted to you. Harvey couldn't help but roll his eyes, ignoring Pierce's teasing quip. He turned to look at the 3 disabled individuals standing before him, their expressions slightly nervous and reserved. Don't be too nervous, and don't worry about enduring severe pain. Mr. Egno will accompany me in the limb transplants. Harvey tried to soothe the 3 brave subjects with a gentle tone. Uriel had met Harvey once before, so he mustered the courage to respond loudly, Lord, we are not afraid. Restoring our disabled bodies is a gift bestowed upon us by your own hands. The remaining 2 nodded in agreement, their eyes filled with the same warmth and admiration. Harvey nodded, very satisfied with their attitude and performance. Well, let's not waste any more time. Come on, take off all your clothes first. Chapter 125 RoboCop. Max opened his eyes, rolled over in bed, and sat up with a swift motion. He then tried a few chest exercises and found that the familiar pain in his back had disappeared. It seemed that the wound from the whipping had almost healed. His mother, Jenna, had deliberately not left for the farm earlier this morning, but waited by the fireplace in the living room for Max to go out with him. How is it? The injury on your back? Jenna asked with concern. Do you want to ask your superior for leave and rest for a few more days? After all, you just finished. Max put on the patrol uniform that he had ironed and hung on the wall last night, and interrupted his mother's chatter. Mom, don't worry, today is my first day on the job at the police department. Look at me in this uniform, don't I look impressive enough? Jenna walked forward to straighten his collar, and unbuttoned and aligned the misplaced buttons. Of course my son looks impressive. You will be a government employee in the future. God bless you. I never thought that this day would come. Max gently hugged his mother with both hands, and kissed her weathered and rough cheek. Okay, Mom, can you bring me the leather boots by the door? I want to wash my face first. Jenna walked to the door and picked up the leather boots that she had repeatedly washed last night, with a complicated expression. Only one leather boot. She tilted her head slightly, looking at her son, who was hunched over a wooden basin, scrubbing his face vigorously. His tall, strong body, and a mechanical leg with a brassy metallic sheen and strange patterns on its surface. Jenna remembered the night before, when Max was carried back on a stretcher by several black-clad soldiers. She lifted the sheet covering her son and saw the metal leg. Max's deformed calf had been sawed off, replaced by a metal prosthetic leg. Jenna broke down and cried, unable to imagine the cruelty her son had endured. Mom, don't worry, I'm not suffering at all. Lord Egno from the hospital gave me anesthesia to relieve the pain. The Lord, personally replaced my mechanical prosthesis with a new one. Jenna still remembered the fanatical admiration on Max's face at the time, and the words he kept muttering to himself, I'm no longer a waste, and no one will call me Lame Mike anymore. Uriel got up early, picked up the luggage he had packed last night, and hugged and said goodbye to the soldiers who had returned to the dormitory early after morning exercises, with reluctant eyes. Yes, he was transferred again. After only working in the defense force for less than 2 months, he received a transfer order issued by the Lord himself, from the political commissar of the defense force to the trainee superintendent of the National Police Agency. Hey everyone, can you all stop looking so gloomy? I've just moved from the barracks to the administrative area. I can still come back to visit you often, and you can come see me on weekends. Captain Uriel, I heard you were demoted to patrol captain? Why is that? We all thought you were doing a great job in the defense force. An outspoken veteran couldn't help but complain loudly. Uriel quickly put his arm around his shoulders and covered his mouth. What nonsense are you talking about? I've been promoted to trainee superintendent at the National Police Agency. Do you understand the value of this? I'll be on the same level as the battalion commander, the veteran, whose mouth and nose he had covered, blushed red, rolled his eyes, and struggled hard. Uriel finally let him go. Captain Uriel. Oh my God. Do you know that your mechanical arm almost crushed my shoulder and head? Uriel froze in his tracks, then suddenly remembered that he had just used his 2 hands, both hands. Why don't I feel anything at all? It's just, as if this was always supposed to be this way, as if my arm had never been severed. He instinctively glanced at his newly fitted prosthetic arm. With a thought, he lifted his arm slightly, his metal hand deftly moving his fingers into a fist. The Lord had kept his word. He had truly fulfilled his promise, restoring my severed limb to its original state. Though it was a mechanical arm, it was indistinguishable from my real one. Even stronger, more powerful. Now, even if the evil beastman who had chopped off his arm stood before him, Uriel was confident he could crush its skull with a single blow. Uriel quickly returned home, dropped the luggage he had brought from the barracks inside, and immediately headed for the newly built police station. As he reached the gate, he spotted Max Anton, another lucky man who had undergone limb reconstruction surgery alongside him. Max Anton, noticing Uriel's presence, waved excitedly, and shouted a greeting. Mr. Uriel. Hi. We're here at the same time. Max pushed hard, trying to jog with Uriel and enter the police station together. But Max, seemingly still unaccustomed to his shoeless prosthetic leg, gave a gentle push and launched himself forward like lightning, losing his balance. He stumbled a few times before falling flat on his face. Uriel, suppressing his laughter, helped him up and dusted off his new uniform. After the surgery, didn't you listen carefully to Master Harvey's instructions? Don't do anything too strenuous until you're fully accustomed to this, alchemical prosthesis. You could get hurt, Max grinned, revealing a full set of white teeth. I was careless. The force and speed of this leg are just too powerful. He glanced around, then leaned over to Uriel and whispered, last night, when no one was around, I actually jumped from the first floor to the roof on one leg. Oh my god, Uriel frowned slightly, about to warn him not to be so ostentatious, when a cold, calm voice suddenly rang out. Are you two performing acrobatics at the police station gate? Get in now. It was their temporary commander, Mr. Asdalin, the Lord's chief advisor. The two men shrugged, shut their mouths, and followed him into the police station in a dejected manner. The first floor hall was deserted. Several trainee police officers who had arrived earlier than them were standing obediently against the wall, and no one dared to start a conversation. Mr. Asdalin was unlike General Reiner. He was known for his stoic personality and bad temper, and he was clad in a terrifying suit of mechanical armor. A pair of crystalline eyes, gleaming crimson, nestled in a metal skull, gave him a formidable appearance. A disabled veteran who had undergone limb reconstruction surgery with them that night hadn't been on time for duty today. He had been struck in the shoulder by an evil orc, shattering his entire arm and part of his shoulder blade. Therefore, after receiving a full prosthetic arm with shoulder blade, he would need even longer to recuperate. Asdalin coughed softly, causing the sound-generating components within the alchemical instrument to emit a rather comical creaking sound, but no one dared to laugh out loud. You 30 people will be the first batch of officers trained by the Territorial Police Department. For the next month, you will report to work on time every day and undergo specialized police training. During this process, those who do not meet the requirements will be removed from the team. Only those who meet the requirements will have the opportunity to serve the Lord and the people of the territory. Report, someone shouted, raising their hands. Asdalin chuckled. Huh? You understand this reporting process in the military? You're a veteran. Yes, sir. I was a member of the sharpshooters before the reform. He rubbed the back of his HUD sheepishly and raised his right hand, which was missing 3 fingers. Excuse me, sir, in my current state, am I really allowed to join the police department and participate in the assessment training? Asdalin interrupted him with a wave of his hand. He pulled Uriel and Max, who were standing there in a daze, and ordered them to roll up their trouser legs and sleeves. See for yourselves. Or you can come up and touch them yourself. Let them show you. The people standing against the wall immediately burst into exclamations. Several people couldn't help but step forward, either grasping Uriel's heavy, sturdy iron arm or crouching down to examine Max's brass-colored mechanical leg. Anyone who is on the National Police Agency's roster and unfortunately disabled will have the opportunity to receive a functional metal prosthetic limb like these, Asdalin announced loudly, raising his voice slightly. Furthermore, your limb transplants will be performed personally by the Lord. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.